All right. Okay, I want to acknowledge our distinguished guests that you have here. Secretary Slater, we have also the delegation from Team 36, Senator Hershey, Delegate Grice, Delegate Jacobs, Delegate Arentz, and we have Executive Director Ports as well. Who am I missing? Is that the top of the MBS? You can introduce your whole team. All right, come on up and
The elegant
you have the
pines.
stage.
Well, great to be here. Thank you all. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Greg Slater, Secretary, Maryland Department of Transportation. Thank you for inviting us here today. We're going to provide an overview of our draft 6-year program. Each member of our business unit team will come up and talk through kind of the aspects of their program. Let me first by introducing the team we have with us today. From State Highway Administration, we have Administrator Tim Smith and our District Engineer Kenny Fender. From the Maryland Transportation Authority, we have Executive Director Jim Ports. From the Maryland Transit Administration, we have our local Transit Support Director Travis Johnston. From the Motor Vehicle Administration, we have Administrator Christy Nizer. From the Maryland Aviation Administration, we have the Regional Aviation Assistance Director Ashish Solanki. And from the Secretary's Office, we have Regional Planner Dan Janasek and our Director of Government Affairs, Pilar Helm. It's certainly been a challenging year in 2021 for all of us. The pandemic led to record decreases in travel and significant impacts to our trust fund. The good news is, in recent months, those trends have recovered. We are here today as we're starting to recover. In the third week of September, traffic on Maryland highways was down 7% compared to those levels at 2019. On the other hand, Maryland's economic recovery and supply chain trying to keep up with that growing demand. Truck volumes on our system is up 9% compared to where we were in 2019. Over at BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, we are down about 25% compared to 2019 as that business travel is recovering a little bit slower than the leisure travel is. Over at the Port of Baltimore, we are rebounding as we're growing the e-commerce business across the state, and we're seeing a lot of activity come through the port. Right here in Queen Anne's County, we have Global Wholesale Supply, Paul Reed Smith Guitars, and Video Mount Products all ship their products through the Port of Baltimore out of Queen Anne's County. More than a year now where Motor Vehicle Administration has operated under that appointment-only environment to promote the safety and health of our customers and our staff. During that team, the agency has significantly expanded its online services through their innovative Customer Connect system. As a result, our MVA is now serving more customers online than we ever have before, and we're actually serving more customers overall than we ever have before by controlling that through the appointment system. Switching over to transit, the ridership on our MTA core services remains consistent. We're getting close to about 70% of pre-pandemic ridership on our core bus systems, and then our Metro light rail and our MARC train are recovering a little bit slower as that government services in DC start to open up. But we recently resumed our full scheduled service on MARC and commuter bus as many riders are returning back to the workplace. Shifting over to the details of our 6-year program, I'm pleased to announce today that our draft 22 to 27 CTP is approximately $16.4 billion. That's $1 billion more than the 6-year program we presented last year and was passed in the budget, and on par with our $16.4 billion program passed in 2019. So we have the 2021 to 26 budget was 15.2, and we're sitting here at $16.4 billion. The largest driver of the increase in the recovery included the influx of COVID relief funds at $841 million out of the federal government, and a revenue gain of $488 million. The largest component of that is the motor fuel tax at $255 million, and our titling fees at $213 million with that recovery. This CTP we are presenting focuses heavily on system preservation, taking care of the system that we have out there. It really is key. More than half of this budget, $8.2 billion, is going directly into state of good repair work. Looking ahead, we believe we've weathered the worst of this COVID revenue impact, and we expect most revenues to return to pre-pandemic levels by 2023. Those federal relief dollars are helping us bridge that gap until we get there. Beyond 2023, revenue growth is expected to be a little bit slower, with no expected growth during that 6-year period. But with some of that uncertainty in mind, we are continued to focus on stretching every dollar that we can and that system preservation focus. We have a significant state of good repair backlog that we're trying to catch up on. That's $7 billion across our transportation system. Much of our infrastructure was built decades ago, and we have to replace those bridges and tunnels and rail lines all at the same time. We have a $2 billion backlog on our transit network, $4 billion on our highway network, $750 million in our 2 main airports, BWI and Martin State, and $100 million in needs of our aging infrastructure over at the MVA, on top of $250 million in needs over at the Port of Baltimore. The whole system is in need of modernization and upgrade through this next generation. We are continuing to support the deployment of electric vehicles as a network of reliable charging stations is needed to refuel them. We currently have about 36,000 electric vehicles in the state and about 1,000 charging stations with 2,700 charger outlets. What you'll see in this program is our priorities are very clearly system preservation, modernizing our system, and building that next shelf of projects, investing in that development and engineering program to get that next shelf ready. Switching over on the federal side, a big part of how we deliver this vision is going to involve the federal investment. As I'm sure you've heard, Maryland received significant funding from the CARES Act, the CRISA Act, and the ARPA Act of 2021. Numerous projects across the state are going to benefit from those funding sources, including a lot of our dredge operations over at Masonville, Cox Creek, and Poplar Island, the Port of Baltimore, upgrade of our transit vehicles, as well as our MVA branches. We are closely watching the activities in DC today, and we're very hopeful for some continuing resolution to keep the government moving, but also that much needed infrastructure investment. We're hopeful they're going to come together so we can make those investments as quickly as they come to us. Before I turn to State Highway, let me first say that Governor Hogan recently announced about $16.8 million in grants to support our bike and pedestrian and trail activities. Here in Queen Anne's County, that includes $59,000 through the Rec Trails program. The program focuses on investments to improve and preserve that statewide rec trail network. These funds are going to be used for construction of that 10-foot wide paved trail to link that northern portion of Kent Narrows to the Cross County Connector Trail that continues to Graysonville. Also here in Queen Anne's County, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources is going to receive about $38,000 through that program, and they're investing that directly into trails at Tuckahoe State Park, Martinic State Park, Wye Island, and Sassafras. So we're going to be highlighting those grants as we go across the state. At this point, I will turn it over to our business units, starting with Tim Smith from the State Highway Administration.
Good afternoon. Afternoon. Pleasure to be here. For the record, Tim Smith, MDOT State Highway Administrator. Happy to be here. So last year, we focused very much on the operations and construction of our existing program through the pandemic and through following proper health practices. And happy to say we made some great progress on a few projects, a few right here in Queen Anne's County. So one of those is we have 4 major resurfacing projects that we either started or finished this past year. So one of those is Maryland 544 in Crumpton. That's roughly a little under a $500,000 project we just completed last December. Another one is Maryland 213 from Churchill to Kingston. That's roughly a $2.1 million project that we just wrapped up, I think just a few months ago, probably about June. Another one is Maryland 544 from 4th Street to 213. That's a $2.1 million project that's anticipated to be complete before the end of this year. We're trying to wrap that up at that point. In addition to that, we have moved forward with a U.S. northbound 301 project, a bridge replacement project. That's basically an $8.8 million bridge replacement at the Chester River. We're anticipating beginning that next spring, so spring of 2022. And hoping to have that completed later on in 2023. So that's a 12 to 18 month window for that one. And lastly, In Kent Island, we began design $170,000 on a sidewalk improvement on Love Point Road. So those are some of the projects we moved forward with over the last year. And as the Secretary mentioned, CTP is kind of back to pre-pandemic levels. So we're looking at rebuilding our shelf of projects in State Highway. And we're focusing on 3 main areas. One's asset management, one's accessibility, and lastly is mobility. So when I talk about asset management, that's really about gearing our program to making sound transportation infrastructure decisions long-term, but making those decisions in the near term. It's about thinking about the next generation and having that mindset. Accessibility is really looking about our vulnerable users like pedestrians, bicyclists, those using scooters, as well as motorists. When Secretary Slater was in the administrator seat in 2019, we started a context guide, which is really just a different way of designing, planning, constructing, and maintaining our roadways. Previously, we just had urban and rural roadways that we're kind of designing for. Now we have a suite of different contexts we're looking at, everything from urban core to urban centers to suburban areas. So we're looking at across all those areas. That's a bit of a culture shift for us because, you know, I'm an engineer, so I can say this. We don't always adjust quickly, but what we're doing now is, from a planning and design standpoint, putting those projects in our hopper, and with that different context, we'll be able to design those projects. So looking through it from a context guide as well as a Vision Zero effort, we know long-term that'll give us safer roadways for everyone. And last item I talked about was mobility. So mobility for State Highway at this point is looking at our existing footprint. What's the best way we can maximize the use of our existing roadways? That's using intelligent transportation systems, using devices and technology we can use on the roadway, looking at hard shoulder running on our shoulders where we have the capability, but basically using a combination of our existing footprint and technology to maximize and both safe movement but efficient use of our roadways. So in closing, we kind of are navigating these challenging times both fiscally as well as mentally as we're trying to kind of rebound from COVID. So what we're doing is as part of that fiscal responsibility, we're looking at our internal resources on how we're making the best decisions, and kind of back to that asset management philosophy. We're looking making the best decisions we can short in the near term, but thinking long term about all our decisions. I'm going to thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to our partners over at MDTA and Jim Ports.
Okay. Well, thank you. For the record, Jim Ports, Executive Director, MDTA. It's always a pleasure to be here in Queen Anne's County. And this past year, the MDTA made great progress in preserving Maryland's toll facilities and developing projects and studies to serve Marylanders into the future. The Bay Bridge Automated Lane Closure System, the ALCS project, was constructed for opening and closing lanes for two-way traffic and operations on the bridges. The ALCS will enhance the current manual system of cones and barrels, and it'll allow our maintenance crews to remotely implement and discontinue two-way traffic on the Bay Bridge on both the eastern and the western shores. The ALCS will include overhead lane use control signals, dynamic message signs, horizontal swing gates, and illuminated pavement markers. Work on the projects such as conduit boring and installation began in February 2020 on the eastern shore and January 2021 on the western shore. The ALCS project includes reconstruction and aligning US 50 eastbound in the former toll plaza area, and in the fall of 2022, the automated lane closure system will be in place in both directions. And I'm going to go off script a second and thank you all for your letter to the BPW to help us on the one side of the bridge going eastbound for that emergency order procurement that we did. So thank you very much. All that support is very helpful. In February, the Tier 1 draft environmental impact statement for the ongoing Chesapeake Bay Crossing study was made available for public review and comment at baycrossingstudy.com. The MDTA held an in-person and virtual public hearings in April, and the comment period ended in May. We expect to identify a selected corridor alternative and publish a combined final environmental impact statement and record of decision in the winter of 2021-2022. The MDTA implemented temporary all-electronic tolling statewide in March of 2020 as part of its COVID-19 response, and we made all electronic tolling permanent in August of 2020. Construction for highway speed all-electronic tolling on new gantries and the removal or partial removal of existing toll plazas is underway at the Fort McHenry Tunnel, JFK Memorial Highway, and the Nice Middleton Bridge. A study is underway for I-895 Baltimore Harbor Tunnel Toll Plaza and interchange improvements which will allow MDTA to bring highway speed all-electronic tolling to the Harbor Tunnel. The MDTA launched Drive EasyMD, the new home for all things tolling in Maryland. The April launch of Drive EasyMD included a new website, web chat, customer call center with expanded hours, text notifications, and more. Customers can now pay their tolls with EasyPass, pay-by-plate, or video tolling. And just a real quick thing on that, we call it good, better, best. Good, you get to go through, get video tolled, but you're going through at highway speeds. Better, pay-by-plate, you pay basically the former cash rate. And then EasyPass, you get at least a 25% discount up to 77% discount for commuters. So to receive the lowest rate, let us know. We'll help you out with your commuter rate, 77% discount. That's my 15-second commercial. I won't bore you with that anymore. More features such as additional vehicle classes with lower toll rates and a mobile app are coming soon. Lastly, major ongoing statewide projects also include the $1.1 billion I-95 Express Toll Lanes Northbound Extension Program to relieve congestion and improve travel along I-95 corridor northeast Baltimore. And construction began in May on the major project to widen northbound I-95 between Maryland 43, which is White Marsh Boulevard, and Maryland 152, which is Mountain Road, to make way for the extension of two-way northbound express toll lanes. The extension is expected to open to traffic by 2024 to Maryland 152, and with full extension north of Maryland 24 open to traffic by 2027. With that, I'll close. I thank you, and I'll now turn it over to Travis Johnston at MTA.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. I'm Travis Johnston, Local Transit Support Director for Maryland Transit Administration. MTA is one of the largest multimodal transit systems in the United States, operating a local bus and commuter bus network, as well as light rail link, metro subway link, MARC train service, a comprehensive mobility paratransit system, and supporting the locally operated transit systems statewide. The agency's goal is to provide safe, efficient, and reliable transit across Maryland with world-class customer service. The COVID-19 health crisis highlighted the critical role transit plays in connecting the region's residents to employment, healthcare, education, and other essential services. I'm happy to report that as of August 30th, all modes have resumed full scheduled service. MTA continues to make significant capital investments in the state of good repair projects to ensure the transit system remains a safe and reliable transportation option for the region. As Secretary Slater mentioned, federal relief funding from the CARES Act, CRISA, and ARPA have filled operating funding gaps and state of good repair needs. MTA will continue to prioritize funding for state of good repair projects across all our modes, with particular focus on our older assets. Recently, MTA published the agency's strategic plan for the next 5 years. The plan is named Rebuilding Better, Committed to an Equitable Transit Future. The plan will guide the agency's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and identifies priorities for the agency to create a brighter future for transit by focusing on technology, communication, and collaboration with equity as the central focus. These commitments build upon the strong foundation and progress MTA has established to improve the transit experience and system reliability for our riders. This includes recognition as the safest transit system in the U.S. for the last 7 years, implementation of Charm Pass mobile ticketing, improving bus reliability with dedicated bus lanes, and expansion of real-time information to MARC train and commuter bus. The full plan is available on the MTA website for review. MTA is also undertaking the first 50-year statewide transit plan. The draft plan is expected to be available for comment by the end of the year. Building upon existing regional and local transit plans across the state, the plan will outline a 50-year vision for transit in Maryland and help define transit needs across the state for future generations. We look forward to continuing to work with Queen Anne's County and stakeholders across the state to develop this long-term vision and framework for coordinated transit service in Maryland. MTA also makes a significant investment in transit in Queen Anne's County by providing nearly $780,000 in operating and capital grants to support the local county-wide transit operation. Additionally, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Queen Anne's County will receive $2.8 million in federal relief funds to support transit operations and/or capital needs for the county transit system. Thank you for your time. I will now turn it over to our teammate, Chrissy Nizer at MVA.
Thank you, Travis. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. At MDOT-MBA, we remain focused on providing that premier customer service, both inside and outside the branch office. As the Secretary mentioned, we are still appointment only, but we have expanded to the capacity that we were doing prior to the pandemic, and in many cases, we're actually serving more customers because the appointments allows us more efficiently to provide that service. Online and kiosks also provide a big portion of our customer service as well, and obviously is something that people are increasingly interested in performing their transactions outside the branch office. The last 18 months, although it's certainly been challenging, it's also given us an opportunity to look again at how we do things and find creative ways to make those services even more convenient. I'd really like to thank the legislature because there were some things that we had to change statute for. In particular, prior to July 1st, you were required to renew, or you could only renew 6 months in advance of your license expiration date. That has been extended. You can now renew your license up to a year before your license expired. That's a benefit for our military, college students out of state, other individuals that may be traveling. It makes it much more convenient for them. We also required a photo every other renewal period. Even if you came in between your renewal period to get a duplicate or corrected license, you had a photo taken at that time. That didn't count in terms of you being able to renew alternatively the next time. We've now changed that statute so that photo that you take during that 8-year period will also count, so that'll allow more people to do their transactions online. And the third thing that we did was related to your vision certification. Most people know over 40, you have to have that vision test every time you renew. That previously was only good for a year. A lot of people go to their eye doctor. They can submit it electronically, or they can sign the form for you. That is now good for 2 years as opposed to the 12 months it was previously. So again, it's all about making it more convenient, allowing more customers to do services online. In fact, from March through August of this year, compared to the same time in 2019, we had a 45% increase in online services. In many ways, that was made possible by our Customer Connect IT modernization project. So our first phase was completed in July of last year. Our next phase that's coming up, including our driver licensing service, will be done in December of this year. So full deployment, that'll allow even more online services, as well as what we like to call the 360 view of the customer. So any transaction you might need to complete, the customer can pull up their information through their online account, as well as us have the ability to provide an additional level of customer service for them, including real-time updates and the ability to have that single portal view of what is happening. We also are excited about the change we're making from a security perspective. So right now you have something called a SoundX. You might call it your driver's license number. It's an algorithm made up of your first letter of your last name and your date of birth. Unfortunately, there are websites out there that try to simulate what that might be because it is an algorithm. We are going to a generated number that will be random and will not be able to be randomly or determined by other individuals, and so that security is important because when your driver's license numbers are obviously used for a lot of other things in addition to MBA services, so we want our customers to feel secure about that. Also with Customer Connect, for our commercial driver's license holders, they'll be able to hold their license for 8 years as opposed to 5 years for non-commercial. That's been in place for many years, but under our existing system did not have the ability to do that, but that will move forward with Customer Connect. We are still working hard on Real ID compliance. I know that's something we've talked about a lot over the last several years. I'm proud to say that Maryland is currently at 82% compliant, so we lead the nation in terms of our residents and the actions they've taken there. DHS has moved that deadline out because of the pandemic, so the new deadline's not till May of 2023, but again, we're really in good shape with regard to the number of individuals who've already taken advantage of that service. We also remain committed to highway safety and making sure we reach that goal of 0 fatalities in partnership with our local jurisdictions. Unfortunately, as has been mentioned already, despite the fact that traffic on the roadway was down as much as 50%, we still saw that dangerous driving behavior and the highest number of fatalities since 2008. So obviously very concerning to us, especially the dangerous behavior we saw. I know we even saw some dangerous behavior on the Bay Bridge and people just doing things that shouldn't be done anywhere on a highway, much less on the Bay Bridge. Part of that solution is some of the Maryland Highway Safety Office funding Governor Hogan announced last month, in particular with the Sheriff's Office and our partnership there to do some enforcement through overtime dollars that were provided. Our Highway Safety Office also does educational campaigns. In particular, for the first time, we've done this overarching campaign called Be the Driver. So you'll see on some of the billboards on 50 that messaging, whether it's distracted driving or speeding, aggressive driving, really trying to have that overarching campaign to remind all of us, frankly, when we get behind the wheel that we have that ability to control what we do and our safety as well as the individuals on the roadway. We strive to be the best in everything we do, whether it's highway safety or whether it's customer service, and really want to take a moment to commend our employees who not only, make some of those great suggestions that I mentioned earlier on to make our services more efficient, but over the last several years have really been on the front lines of delivering customer service in a very challenging environment, and so proud of the job they do every day to serve Maryland residents. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I'm now going to turn it over to Ashish Shalanki from the Maryland Aviation Administration.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, delegation, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. Throughout the pandemic, we have collaborated with state and federal leaders and public health officials in partners to ensure the safe, healthy airports are for our customers and our constituents, both at BWI Marshall as well as Martin State airports. Our airport communities remain focused on providing healthy and safe travel. The strong recovery that we have experienced reflects the confidence that our customers feel with the safe, comfortable environment and the services that they receive. In fact, the recovery at BWI Marshall Airport leads the metropolitan region, with growing passenger traffic and new air service. I am particularly proud of the work that our employees during the pandemic and the fact that the BWI Marshall Airport was named a top North American airport in its size in the 2020 Airport Services Quality Awards. This ASQ program recognizes global airports for delivery of the best customer service as measured by our passengers. To receive this honor during the pandemic, one of our most challenging times in our history, was a remarkable achievement, not just for us at the MAA, but also for our partners and airlines. Throughout the pandemic, we continue to innovate and provide new services and amenities for our passengers, like the $48 million 5-gate extension to Concourse A that offers new food, retail concessions, upgraded restrooms, and more capacity for Southwest Airlines, our largest airlines at the airport. Also, our new state-of-the-art electric vehicle charging stations, which are an important collaboration with BGE, helps to boost the charging infrastructure in our region. Moving forward on the capital program, we remain focused on improving facilities and services for our customers while providing opportunities for domestic and international air service. System preservation and resiliency are a major focus for our MAA capital program. Driven by the need to provide exceptional service to our customers in the safest and most reliable, efficient manner, system preservation projects include airport-wide restroom renovations, fuel storage replacement and enhancements, electrical feeder replacements, airfield lighting, vault upgrades, and passenger boarding bridge replacements. Additionally, as the designated reliever, general aviation reliever to BWI Marshall, improving facilities at our Martin State Airport is a key component to maintaining safe and efficient regional aviation system, servicing the needs and balancing the operational requirements of not just our commercial needs, but our corporate, personal, emergency response, as well as our military aircraft operators. After a short pause due to the pandemic, we are moving forward with a major multi-year terminal improvement program with Southwest Airlines, the largest airline at the airport. The Concourse AB connector baggage handling system, as mentioned earlier by Secretary Slater, will transform a major portion of our airport, creating an enhanced travel experience for passengers and supporting future growth for this airline. The improvements include direct concourse-to-concourse connectivity, new food and retail concessions, modern restrooms, and expanded airline hold rooms. All of this will sit on top of the brand new state-of-the-art sophisticated baggage handling system. This large-scale project will be largely funded by airport revenue bonds, which we issued for the first time ever this past summer. And as our CFO likes to add, the bond issuance was well received by both rating agencies and investors. We also are moving forward on major site preparation and utility work that will support construction of a major aircraft maintenance base for Southwest Airlines. This is the first such maintenance base for Southwest in the Northeast Corridor. MAA will continue to support aviation projects across the state in partnership with our 35 public use airports, including the 2 airports you have here, both at Bay Bridge Airport as well as Kentmore Airpark. For the statewide aviation grant program that provides important state funding and support for improvements, MAA intends to provide grants of $1.6 million in state fiscal year 22 for our regional airports. Specifically at Kentmore Airpark this year, we're providing $152,000 in state aviation grant assistance for stormwater drainage improvements. As the global aviation industry continues to recover and rebound, across MAA, we are working to provide the excellent service our customers are looking to. We remain committed to excellent service and convenience for our customers, both at BWI Marshall, Martin State, and I'll add the regional airports across our state. Now it's my pleasure to turn it back to Secretary Slater.
Great. Thank you, Ashish. And thank you to the whole team for their great updates. So I'll now turn it back over to the Commission President and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Right. Any questions?
That's our senator.
The delegation want to speak? Questions?
I'll just real quickly just say thank you.
Come on up. Come on. Hey, Greg.
We have, this is the third of the CTPs that the delegation has gone through with Secretary Slater and his team, and each one of them are very informative and able to highlight on some of the issues that are very specific into the county that they're talking about. So we very much appreciate that. We've had some questions previous before, but I think obviously one of the big things that continues to come up, mostly in Queenies County, deals a lot with the Bay Bridge. Secretary talked about the, I don't remember the acronym anymore, but the automatic lane closure something system.
The gate system.
Gate system. That you expected to be online, I guess, next year, beginning of next year. Biggest issue, again, we'd like to hear a little bit more about was the Bay Bridge crossing study, where we are with the NEPA that has seemed to have gotten delayed a little bit. But I think Executive Porch said that we would see something end of this year, beginning of next year. But just really wanted to hear what that specifically, what was that the final NEPA 1, and then what the next steps were. I think a lot of people listening would probably like to hear that as well, too.
Sure, absolutely. Let me take a shot at it and see if Executive Director Ports or anyone else is here as well wants to kind of fill in. But we're on target for a record decision in the winter, so it could be end of 2021, beginning of 2022. At that point, we'll know really what that Tier 1 record of decision looks like and be able to make a decision on where to go with Tier 2. And I know building consensus between the counties has been a big part of our efforts and a big part of how we kind of move forward.
Let me follow then. Tier 1 then will identify the final solution.
No, tier 1 will identify a corridor. Tier 2 will identify the solution.
Okay, and so this is the one that they had the map that had the 14 different corridors, I believe.
Right.
It had been narrowed down that this part of the study went to 4 corridors, 3 corridors.
And a no bill.
No bill.
3 plus no bill, correct, was always an option.
4 options.
4 options. So this, what we will see at the end of this winter will be, go back to a comparison of the one option and a no-build option? Is that what we'll see?
You always have to have the no bill
Correct.
comparison
Right.
by law.
Right.
Correct. So the way it works is, a lot of times, you don't have to do 2 tiers, okay? Knightsbridge, for example, there's no other place in Knightsbridge is going to go except right next to the Knightsbridge. You're not going to pick another corridor. So the reason you do a tier 1,
Why wouldn't you pick another corridor there? Why is there no other place for it to go?
because it's the connection between Charles County and Virginia, and it's the best place for it to go.
Well, I don't argue that it's the best place, but it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, they could have put it a mile upriver, a mile down.
Oh, yeah, I guess they could have, but
I'm-
it made more sense to do it right next to it, sort of like you did most of the bridges along the eastern shore going down to Ocean City. Almost every one of them is right next to the other one, right? And then they use the other parts for fishing piers. It's a similar situation. In this,
The other thing, Jim, just important to recognize for a project like the Knightsbridge, that's purely a system preservation type of an effort. We have a bridge that's coming to the end of its useful life. It's not seeing the significant traffic issues that we see here on the Knightsbridge. It's just replacing an old bridge with a new bridge.
so you go through a tier 1 to look at all the other alternatives that might be possible, because people ask us to look south, they ask us to look north, and so that's why the tier 1 is done. And then we, as you mentioned, we narrow it from 14 potential locations to 3 plus no build. What the end of this, after all the public hearings, both virtual and in person, what occurs is you have a selected corridor alternative. So you go from 3 to 1. Now, it's a 2-mile swath, because environmentally, they got to look at that, and they want to make sure that they can look at how to protect, like Sandy Point Park and these other sensitive areas. So then what happens is we end up with a final environmental impact statement, and the feds, because it's a federal process, everybody has to understand it's a federal process, not our process, they come up with the record of decision. And that record of decision we expect, like we said, end of this year, beginning of next year. If I'm not mistaken, I think the feds said right around March 14th. March 14th. I'm getting a thumbs up from my planner, who does this for a living, right? So she teaches me. I talk about what she tells me. So we believe it's going to be March 14th is the projected date at this point.
Okay, so at that point, we will have then that single corridor. What is the next step?
So then we would have to identify funding for a potential Tier 2 study.
So many people have talked to me, they hear about what's going on in Washington DC with infrastructure bills. Now, whether there's infrastructure in those bills or not, remains to be seen. But is the Bay, do we know if at all, is the Bay Bridge being talked about in federal terms of infrastructure?
I don't believe so, because we don't even have a record of decision yet from the federal government, so they probably won't even entertain it at this point. They're looking for shovel-ready, right, projects. That you've heard that term, I knew, several times. And so they're looking for things that have, gone through most of the processes and are ready to construct.
Right.
Because that's what infrastructure is all about. It's about implementing those.
And so once we have this record of decision in March, then the second phase or NEPA, second phase of the NEPA takes place. Timing of that?
So again, we had to wait for the record of decision, okay? And That's really the key. That's going to determine where it's going to be and how we need to proceed at that point, okay? So we don't know all the parameters at this time. But like I said, we would have to identify funding to go to a potential Tier 2 study. And that study could take, 4 to 5 years, and most of it is environmental impacts is what
Right.
takes so long.
Let me ask, because again, I hear there's a lot of talk about transportation projects in Maryland. Obviously, the Washington DC corridor is talking about a massive transportation project. Those types of projects are funded the same way or differently than these are?
That's private.
That's private because they've elected to go to a P3.
It's a P3. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's completely different.
As far as the funding for the NEPA study and anything that's necessary for that, the private entities are doing that as well?
No, the state is funding the NEPA studies independently
Okay.
for those roadways in the DC region.
So.
We will do a procurement.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But we're still in the NEPA. So when we have to get funding for a NEPA study, where are the people that want to see something happen with this going to ask for money for that NEPA study to be
I think they're in
performed?
this room.
I know where the people that are going to ask, where's the money going to come from?
Well, the money would
I mean, where did the money come from for the Washington DC NEPA studies?
So the Washington DC NEPA studies would come from the Transportation Trust Fund.
Okay.
The MDTA facilities are self-funded through the Maryland Transportation Authority budget.
So they would have to come from the MDTA funding for
Yeah,
that.
so the way that would work is we get to the end of this Tier 1, we start to get kind of where that is and what that direction is, and Jim and Melissa and their team will come in and present that to the MDTA board, and we'll start to figure out what's the next steps and have that discussion about what the next steps are. In my mind, I think the best course of action for this project is to think about that Tier 2, but think about how much you want to go into Tier 2. I think, if I had to develop a recommendation with where we are now, I think the process, you want to keep that moving. But I would argue that this is the kind of project that the engineering is pretty complex. So you want to overlap a little bit of that preliminary engineering with your Tier 2 NEPA process, get it to that 30%, which is where the feds are seeing that shovel ready. You can start to get permits in place, those types of things. And then that way, if another infrastructure bill or something like that comes out, and you have different tools, Jim referenced the private sector. Now, there are some of the tools that the private sector is using are tools that we may want to elect to use in the construction of the Bay Bridge in the future. No interest loans through TIFIA, those types of things, and the infrastructure banks that could be available.
It helps that the secretary has a planning background.
Okay, I appreciate it. I don't want to go to too much of the details, but I do know that we are coming to that decision point in March. Legislators will be in session at that time. I've had legislation in before that had to deal with some funding for NEPA studies, as you're aware. So I just want to make sure that we are on board to help out, again, the way that the commissioners help direct us as well, too, and what needs to
And of
occur.
course, you know the CTP process, so April 1st is the priority letter, so we'll be right back at it again with the county's priorities.
Right. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to see you guys and ask some questions. I don't know if the colleagues will do the same. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, gentlemen. Commissioners, thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak. Kind of to what the Senator was talking about, I've been in politics now for about almost 12 years, and this has been at the forefront. And I guess I'm looking for some help from you all to help us. How do we put this and expedite this process and make it a super priority? We've seen some big major projects in the state move forward very quickly, and I understand there's some issues with that and how that all happens. But how do we work within the state to really motivate and move the state along with how do we motivate our federal partners? And is there a process that we could actually put through on this? you know, the big point here, guys, is you don't see the stuff we live through every weekend. You feel it a little bit, but you don't live it every weekend, and we are.
I get the emails and the phone calls.
You
yeah.
get the emails, but I get in my face, and that's a little hard for me to take. And when you're sitting there asking these questions and getting these questions, they're always saying, well, how is it that Montgomery County's turning down dollars? And we can't get them. So is there a way or a methodology, legislation that we could put in to help expedite this?
Sure, and let me give kind of my perspective on it at first. I think it's really twofold. One is here locally, and when I say here locally, it's really kind of the state, continuing to focus on keeping the process moving. There are parts of this process that we can expedite, and there are parts that we can't. You know, I wish I could get, you know, some of the federal processes to be a little smoother or a little more kind of friendly, but that's more challenging for us. However, we have shown that we have the ability to move some things under certain processes if we get them in the right envelope. So we need to keep that going. So, you know, the key for us right now is to focus on getting to that tier 1 and getting into tier 2, keeping that process going. On the infrastructure side, on the federal side, you know, we're going to be, you know, when it comes time to cross that bridge, I tried to find a different term.
Wow, yeah, come on.
But when it comes time to be there, we're going to have to be looking at, you know, where we are in terms of our debt limits and what we can afford and when we can afford it and how that cash flow works. But those big infrastructure projects, we will very likely need some federal help at some point to help us get there sooner. So I think that's a big part of that conversation.
That's my question, though. Is there something we can get, that we can put in this year to help you get to that point, Because we will be dealing with our federal partners come January in our Eastern Shore delegation.
Yeah, I think after we get the record of decision, then that would be the time to start that. But let me go back to what Senator Hershey said a little while ago. He talked about a delay, right? And I'm just giving this as an example of how it's a federal process, not a state process, and it's kind of out of our hands. We're trying to push the envelope. So when we had public meetings scheduled back in November, December, okay? And you might recall that that's when the second, I guess, wave of COVID started hitting again. And we use public libraries as our source to put all of our information for public assessment and stuff. And we also use, you know, schools or community centers for the public meetings. So we had all that scheduled. Second wave comes in, and Anne Arundel County closes their libraries. A lot of their buildings were closed. They weren't allowing big groups to get together. It was nearly impossible to have a in-person public meeting. So we asked the federal government to speed the process along, if we could have virtual meetings. And at first they said yes. And we're like, great, we'll schedule the virtual meetings. And we did that. And then we got the call and said, you can't do virtual meetings. You must have in-person meetings. And we're like,
I get
we
that.
can't
We need to know if there's something we can do to expedite that.
I understand, Steve, but what I'm trying to explain is we will help you try to move the process along. It's not our process, so it's not always in our control.
Okay. All right, good with that. Last question was, with all the things we just found out about Easy Pass, I missed the meeting last week. Can you tell anybody here how we rectify that situation? Sure. And how do I, if I'm a victim of that, how do I get my money?
A victim
of the Easy Pass issue where you overcharged.
The challenge we had with the axle readers and the treadles.
Yeah. So first of all, the one with the axle treadle, everybody got reimbursed. Okay. The problem with that one was that the treadle was double counting. Okay. We have algorithms that we look at. You know, when we see that everybody's counted as a truck, we know that doesn't happen in any lane. We notified the vendor immediately. They shut down the lane immediately. And it was about 5 hours. And then we went back and we reimbursed all the customers. It's in the audit that
It's
we
in the,
reimbursed.
and everybody believes, because it came out in the newspaper, everybody's out there checking their Easy Passes.
Never
and they
been
need to feel
misquoted.
better.
It should, and there's certainly, if they check their Easy Pass and find a discrepancy, contact us and we will work with them to.
But there's nobody, regular
we-
person, got a
so-
bad Easy Pass.
So we have processes in place, and there were some other anomalies. So one of the other anomalies is, in the transition, we had two different vendors on the different lanes. So what we have in place, and we told the auditors this, what we have in place is a system where if it sees a double count, it gets picked up on the software on the other end, and we remove the one account, okay? So we have processes in place, but when there were two different vendors, that didn't work. And so what we did is we went back and we looked at those and we reimbursed those customers. Anytime we
So
find...
everybody is whole at this point, you're saying that?
No, because some of the people some of them, because anomalies happen, anytime, some of them we're still researching to make sure that we find all the customers, and then we'll continue to reimburse them. So I don't want to say every single person's whole at this time, because we're still reimbursing
Okay,
some
you're
now.
taking care of that on your end, I don't have to
Right,
take care of it. That's what I'm trying to
right,
get at.
yeah.
That's what I'm getting at with, I have to go through my record. Okay, thank you, appreciate the time.
Sure.
Either.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Commissioners and Mr. Secretary, Mr. Ports. I asked a question up in Cecil County about the delay in the billing. And I think, the backlog, and I think that it would be pertinent to, if you could explain that here in Queen Anne's, because, we got a lot of bridge riders here that are under the same scenario. And that's some of my constituents in this area expressed that same question. They haven't received a bill in 6 months. Is basically what the question was. And I thought Mr. Ports did a great job up in Cecil, but I think you should let us know here in Queen Anne's.
Okay, no, I'd be happy. Thank you for that. So as I mentioned, when COVID hit, nobody was expecting that, obviously. It's 100-year disease. And so we immediately had to go to electronic tolling. And that was partially to protect our toll collectors, because we didn't want them catching this invisible disease, and we didn't want them spreading it, because, as you may recall, they said that you can pass it along on any kind of surface. So if you're giving change back or dollar bills back, you can pass along and everybody would be impacted with this disease. So again, we weren't anticipating that, obviously, and so we had to go to all electronic tolling. When that occurred, you might recall that the governor and comptroller and many people in the House of Delegates and Senate and all were saying, what can we do to help protect people that are out of their job, losing their job, or losing hours in their job? Because, a lot of people were impacted and getting laid off during COVID. And so the governor, you may recall, was asking for car dealerships to minimize the payments and work with people. If you were renting homes or something, work with the people. They were asking banks to loosen up on the mortgage bills and stuff to help people not fall deeply into debt and lose their home or their car. So obviously the governor, being a good leader, he also asked parts of state government to do the same thing. And so what we did is we paused the video tolls because we can't tell, if you lost your job or not, but we can pause the toll. And and so we did to help a lot of those individuals who may be impacted with job losses. And it was also kind of the perfect storm, because we were also transitioning from a vendor that we had for 15 years to a new vendor. And so the part about pausing the bills and then transitioning, because one vendor we had to stop, and then all that information had to be turned over to the other vendor. That caused a delay. And so, we're working that delay down now. Now, I will say that in most cases, I think I mentioned the other day that you go to a furniture store, big purchase, right? And the furniture store says, hey, come on in, buy now, and you don't have to make any payments and no interest for a year. And we look at that as a plus, as an advantage to us, because we don't have to make payments for a year, we get interest free for a year. That's exactly what we have in this situation. We paused the bill, no bill for, about 8 months, and no interest impact. So, but just like the furniture store or the auto purchase, the bill comes due at some point, and that's due now. Same with BG&E and all the other utilities and everything else that was paused. So that's where we are.
So, and that's part of the question, is that these people are concerned they were going to get, so our constituents would get this large bill. And I think the way you explained it, it would be a week of current charges and a week of past charges.
Correct. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes. So the vendor would like to get all this backlog completely done all at one time, and we've been asked by the press, why aren't you doing it quicker? Well, the reason we're not doing it quicker is because we don't want our customers to get a really big bill. We want them to have a good customer experience, but we also want to get reimbursed for the payment. So what we're doing is we asked our vendor to give our customers a week of the current bills, if they're continuing to go through the tolls now, and a week of the backlog. So it's going to take us longer to get our money, but that's okay, because the constituents get a better customer experience.
And then there's no penalty or interest on these back charges unless they don't pay their bill in the proper time frame.
Correct. So that's correct. We're not hitting them with any kind of interest or charges or penalties or anything. So what happens is we'll mail them the NOTD. They have 30 days to pay it, plus technically another 15. And then if they don't pay it within that time frame, then the penalties would kick in. But no, we won't hit anybody with a penalty. And I also will mention that we also understand that the U.S. Postal Office has had some problems getting some bills out and getting people their mail. So if there's a situation where you have an NOTD and it's, let's just say, 30 days late already because of the Postal Service, we will work with that constituent and we'll waive the penalty.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I wanted to mention early payment discounts as well if they pay online.
Oh, yeah. If they, great point. Thanks, Will. So constituents can go online now and look at their bill, and they can make an early payment, and we give a discount. So we're trying to make it as customer-friendly as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Will.
I don't have any questions, but just some comments. The state's budget between the operating and the capital budget's what, $80 to $85 million, or $1 billion rather, and it arguably transportation funding is the most competitive in the budget. I think that most of us can probably agree to that. And if we go back this time 8 years ago, there was change in the air. Now here we are today. There's change in the air. And I will say that Governor Hogan, when he was sworn into office, he made a commitment to roads and bridges, a strong commitment to roads and bridges. And he followed through with it. He spent a bunch of money on things these projects that were not sexy, replacing overpasses, repaving roads, widening roads, extending roads, the Nice Bridge, Dover Bridge, 404. I mean, these were very, very expensive projects that, quite frankly, ticked off urban and suburban legislators in Maryland so much that they passed land-breaking legislation. They completely revamped how construction projects are going to be funded, and they tilted it toward mass transit. They did. They also changed legislation that basically says, you know what, the users of mass transit, well, there's no, we don't care how much their fares are going to pay toward the operating cost. We don't care about that. In fact, if they had their way, it would be free. And this happened during an administration that is fully committed to roads and bridges. And we also have a trust fund that should be dedicated to roads and bridges because the users of this trust fund drive on roads and bridges, right? But they were very successful over the last, they being these urban and suburban legislatures, were very successful in changing the laws to be able to siphon billions of dollars from the Transportation Trust Fund from roads and bridges into mass transit. Changes in the air again. And I will encourage everyone, not just Queen Anne's County, everyone who lives in rural areas to ask those questions over the next 12 months because elections mean something. And this isn't a political statement. This is a statement about us representing rural areas because we saw what happened during an administration that was fully committed to rural areas. I can't imagine someone who's fully committed to mass transit, both in the executive branch. We could see 3 new members of the Board of Public Works. I have a feeling I know who's going to probably represent the comptroller's office. Yeah. Yeah. We don't know the governor's office, but changes in the air, folks. And we have a lot of very, very critical, from us being on the Eastern Shore, we have a lot of critical questions to ask a lot of these candidates over the next several months because things could change very quickly for us, and we have to make sure because every year that these guys come in here, we want Y Mills, we want an overpass there, we want an overpass, at the end of 404, we want widening, of Route 50, we want to fix this issue on Kent Island, we want a new bridge. I mean, all this stuff costs money. But I know that we're very concerned, and Jim, no one's fought harder than this team right here to try to keep that money in the rural areas. And unfortunately, we're the minority in our arguments, and we work very closely. These guys have been very, very helpful for us. But I would encourage everyone you talk to ask those critical questions of every single candidate that comes into Queen Anne's County. Are you committed to funding rural infrastructure projects? Are you, and hopefully they're going to be honest with you. So, thank you, guys.
All right. Since we got through the delegation.
Any questions from?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
I guess I think I'm confused about one of your comments. The Nice Bridge, did that go through the NEPA process?
Yeah.
It went through phase 1 and phase 2?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
That's what I said. Because we weren't putting it someplace else, we didn't have to do 2 phases. We had to do 2 tiers.
But you had to do phase 1?
Yeah, of course.
So if this bridge, the Bay Bridge, comes back in phase 1 as it's going right where it is now, then we don't have to do phase 2?
No.
So this one, we still have to do phase 2, but the other one, we don't have to do phase 2?
Correct.
Why is that?
I shouldn't put it into tier 1, tier 2 with the Nice Bridge. It might have just been a tier 2, for example. I'd have to ask my planner.
For the Nice Bridge, we did not do a tiered process. We just did a straight NEPA process.
Straight.
Okay.
Meaning we did not look at different.
Come on up here. I guess I got, just so, because it gets confusing when you talk about these NEPAs. So
That's
you're
why
saying,
I got to bring the expert up.
Understood. So how did you do the Nice Bridge?
With the Nice Bridge, we knew the goal of the project was replacing the existing infrastructure
Okay.
that was aging.
Okay.
And that was at the end of its,
Okay,
nearing the end
so
of its useful
hold that
life.
thought.
Yes.
These bridges are past their life cycles, they're aging, and we want to replace them. So why can't we do it the same way we did it at the Nice Bridge?
These bridges are not structurally efficient, they're functionally obsolete.
So they're not-
There's more traffic on them than they can handle, but condition-wise, those bridges are structurally sound. The
Right
Nice
now.
Bridge was at the end of its useful life. It was a structural issue.
When you're looking at a project like the Bay Bridges, and there is so much interest in moving the location, by doing a tiered process, essentially tier 1, we lock in the location, which is that 2-mile corridor. The thought of, let's go put it far north or far south, that door is closed. Tier 1 will lock in the corridor. And at that point, we lock that and we start the next step, which is the detailed NEPA. We're talking boots on the ground, doing wetland studies and things like that in that too. Yeah, that too. In
okay.
that
All
corridor.
right. So if one of these bridges was structurally insufficient, what would we be doing right now?
So let me touch this a little bit. I think what you're trying to understand is, are we doing a process that takes longer
Yes.
or not? So the tiered process doesn't necessarily take longer. It streamlines the front end of the NEPA process. We did a non-tiered process on the Thomas Johnson Bridge down by Pax River Naval Base. It took 10 years. We were replacing an existing bridge with an existing bridge. It took us 10 years, just based on changing federal guidelines as they go along. What the tiered process does, it allows you to streamline the front end so that we've agreed on a corridor. Now let's talk details, so that when we're talking details, we're not getting pulled in other directions to say, why don't we put it there, or why don't we put it there?
It's getting to that first step in locking.
Right.
And getting a locked decision.
Okay.
Which actually allows us to move forward at a much better cost, much more expeditiously, and it actually helps the process move forward quicker. An example I would like to give, if you don't mind, the I-95 corridor in Baltimore, we did a master plan study, which is very similar to a Tier 1, Tier 2 study. And folks said, oh, a master plan, what are you taking all that time? It took us 2 years. We looked at the entire 50-mile corridor of I-95 owned by the authority, and by doing that master plan, we locked so many of the preliminary decisions that when we started working on the individual projects, we were able to crank them out in 2 years. It allowed us to move faster when we got to the more detailed NEPA study. So it might seem like it takes longer, but it actually helps secure the process so you can move forward more expeditiously.
Okay, so who funded phase 1 of the NEPA for the bridge crossing?
MDTA.
I thought the governor didn't put any money into this?
MDTA.
So it was all his...
We're self-funded by tolls, period.
Okay,
We're
so
a
that-
special fund.
Okay.
We don't get any money from MDOT.
Okay, so
we don't get federal
that's why
funds.
the phase 2 of the NEPA is not in the CTP?
That's
Because,
correct.
so it comes from your tolling only?
So, okay, but we talked about this last year, I believe. You won't see it in the CTP until we have a record of decision.
Okay,
You
so,
have to get the okay from the feds before we start moving forward. And part of that is let's just give you another example. We cannot start the process of a Tier 2, for example, because if we were to do that, we could get no funding from the federal government for that money spent. And it's sort of like your projects. If you move forward too quickly and it's got federal funds involved, you can't get reimbursed for those federal funds. And so we need to follow the federal process.
well, I get that. Okay, so March, you're going to get a decision.
We believe
You believe in March you're going to get a decision on...
Crystal ball.
Correct. So
Could
phase
be
2...
broken.
So March 15th, you get a decision. April 1st, how do we get this? Our whole job up here now is to get this done as quickly as possible, because that's the only way it's going to resolve this issue. So with that being said, how do we know that MDTA is serious about this? How do we know that you're going to move forward, or be directed to move forward? That's our question. How do we get to that point where we know, because again, I hear this, then we go to phase 2 and how are we going to fund it?
You have to fund phase 2 first.
Right. And
So you've
I
got to find
understand
the
it comes
funding.
through you, because I know a year ago we were talking about westbound tolls and dynamic tolling to fund phase 2 of the NEPA, to have a funding source.
So let me say it like this. And you may have heard me say this the other night at Broadneck. Back in 2006, the previous administration did a study, and they determined that we'd be at 100,000 people during prime time, summertime, this year. And they were right. Even back in 2006, they did that, right? I would suggest that they probably should have started this process back then. Okay?
No argument
So
there.
when you ask if we're serious, this is the first governor that is serious and actually funded for the governor a Tier 1 study. I don't think you have to ask if we're serious or not. We're the first ones to do it.
That is correct.
Okay.
And let's frame it in a different way. April 1st, if you come out with a commitment, here's how we're moving and we're starting phase 2 of the NEPA, away we go. If it drags out past the elections and somebody gets elected
Oh, yeah.
Like Delegate Grice says, it's not interested in that bridge, and they tell you, stand down,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Once
true.
once you start, can the next
I
governor
probably won't
stop
be
it?
here, but yeah.
Once you start the second phase of the NEPA, can the next governor stop it? That is my question.
So I would suggest that if we do start this, it would be difficult for the next governor to stop.
Don't say if, say when.
Oh, yeah, well, I can't say that until I have a record of decision. So you can't, in my position,
Understand?
I can't say what you're asking me to say,
Okay.
just because of the law.
Come March 15th, I'll be looking for you.
Do that.
All right. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, that's the bottom line is, you know, Queen Anne's County, Anne Arundel County, you know, we're trying to work together. We're trying to give everything we humanly can to get this process up and running to alleviate the issues. But you guys hold the cards close to your chest, and I get it.
You know, Jim, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Moran. I don't think you have to ask about our commitment because, quite frankly, you know, I've been here just a little over 2 years in this position, and you know I inherited the redecking project. It was a 2-year project. Through negotiations with the governor, our consultants, our developer, myself, we got that done in 1 year. We also are the first administration to remove the toll booths, which, you know, does not alleviate the volume problem that we have, but it does help the queuing that occurred quicker because of the toll booths. And then, of course, they've been doing barrels and cones since the beginning of time. And we are the first administration to come up with an automated gate system. So I think that when you look at our record, and we're the first administration to start the Tier 1 study, even though studies were done back as far as 2006. So I think if you look at our record of accelerating the redecking, accelerating the toll booth removal, accelerating the gate project, including an emergency procurement, I think we have a pretty darn good record.
So I'll
of
take that
commitment.
as a yes.
I think we have a pretty darn
March
good
16th,
commitment. I
you're
think we
gonna
have a
fund
good,
phase
darn
2 of
good
NEPA?
record of commitment.
Okay. All right. That's all. I mean, we've said in the past, we just want some hope. Got to see light at the end of the tunnel. So you're saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure that phase 2 of the NEPA is going to get funded and we're going to move forward. Then okay.
I'm not saying that.
I know you're not saying that, but I'm hearing that. Okay.
Okay,
So that's
you
what
can
I'm
hear
hearing.
whatever
So-
you want to hear.
Okay.
I'm saying we have been committed, and you heard this from Delegate Grice. I think you see this administration has been very committed.
Absolutely,
To
100%.
rural Maryland.
100%.
And that commitment is not going to end while I am here.
Okay.
Now, I might not be here in the next administration. Probably
He
won't.
might not be here either.
Probably won't.
Right.
Definitely not be here in the next administration.
Yeah. So all I can vouch for is my commitment, Governor Hogan's commitment, Greg Slater's commitment,
Okay.
our whole team, MDTA team is what I'm talking about, commitment to this area, and I think we have a good record.
Okay. So is there federal funding for the Nice Bridge?
There's federal loans.
Loans. Okay.
For construction.
I mean, because
we do not get federal funding
right.
because we are totally funded by tolls. However, as Secretary Slater just mentioned, we are looking at a TIFIA loan.
They're not transportation trust fund money.
Right. Federal loans, you have to follow federal process.
But
And
if
we
the
have to pay it back.
What's if the federal government came and said, "We'll give you $3 billion," you'll take it?
We go ask them.
Okay. All right. Just want to just make sure about that.
do it all the time.
Processes so that if money like that
Because
would be available, we
I've
can
always
take
been
it.
told, I've always been told that
That's why
in
we're
order for this project to get done, it has to be the state's #1 priority because of the amount of money that's in this project. Is that right? I mean, you understand the phase 2 of the NEPA, you have to have a funding source, and the funding source isn't just for the NEPA, is it not for the entire project?
Yeah, so you get through, I'm trying to understand kind of the context of, it's got to be the state's #1 priority. I mean, we have priorities all over the state.
Correct.
But I mean, investing in this, so by way of process, so you go to tier 1, we go to tier 2, then we go into design, we go into kind of right-of-way, whether there's utility work, pre-construction work that would need to get done. And so when you get towards the end of tier 2, and you start getting into those design phases and really have a solid understanding of impacts and utilities and any right-of-way on approaches and those types of things, permitting issues that you would need to do, then you really start looking at, on a project of this size, what are our options in terms of paying for construction? Because what Jim referenced on the front end of, if we don't follow certain processes, we can't get reimbursed on the federal front. The same thing is on the other end of that. If the feds make an investment in some of those pre-development activities, they want you to fund a subsequent phase, or you have to pay that back. So, you get both ends of that. So, for instance, if we spend 3 or 4 years in federal dollars and invest in pre-development work, and then when the project sits on the shelf, the feds want their money back, because they want to know that if they're investing in that pre-development work, that you're going to fund construction and somebody's actually going to see an improvement from that.
But I guess maybe I guess what I'm asking is, in phase 2 of the NEPA, do you have to show the powers that be, the federal government, your funding source for the entire project? And how you're going to fund it? Is that part of the phase 2? Is
Part
that
of phase 2
At
is
some
showing
point.
a financial plan.
Okay.
It needs to be completed by the end.
Yeah, at some point.
Of
Okay,
phase
good.
2.
Not at the
You have to
beginning.
have a
Okay, good.
financial plan.
Okay.
that
You would have to
show-
have a financial plan approved.
Okay, good.
By the end.
Okay.
So that's the important part, because as we're going
Because
through.
we don't even know what it's gonna look like
Right.
yet.
We have to know what we're
Understand.
funding.
We gotta know what we're funding first.
Cable stay, is it?
Well, and now, I mean, the only other thing I have to say about the bridge, because
I don't believe that.
Oh, well, the only other thing I have to say about the bridge right now is you still need to do something about those truckers. They're in that center lane and they're in that left lane, and I don't know how you're going to do it, but you need it. I mean, I meant to pull my phone out and videotape the other day, but I said I better not.
I wish
Not
you
while you're
would.
driving, not while you're driving.
Yeah.
Oh, he's done it before. Anyway,
Only for you.
we did increase
I know you
the
did.
signage.
That's what I'm just saying. There's.
And we had the variable signs, but we also had officers out there giving tickets.
Right.
And in some cases, warnings. We can step it back up again. I mean, it's kind of like speeding.
Right.
When you see a police officer on the side of the road, you slow down, and then after you pass them, you speed up, right?
Yep.
That's what happens in a lot of cases. I see it every day. But, it's the same thing that happens with these truckers. We got to stay on them.
Yeah, that's all. Increase signs.
We'll look at it again.
Now, I'm going to give you a couple of attaboys, and don't get all warm and fuzzy with me.
Oh, I know better.
Well, I will say the messaging is working.
Good.
The messaging, the emails, the message boards are working. There's been at least 4 times when there was over 7-mile backups that I've driven to 18 all the way out to Love Point Road with no backups. So the messaging is working, and I honestly think you need to step that messaging up on the Western Shore to help Anne Arundel County out, because the messaging is working. I'm hoping we can get another message board up before you get to Nesbitt westbound, telling people the time, because the time it takes to get to the bridge, depending on the backups, has been pretty much spot on.
Can I say something on that?
Sure.
You all had brought up the fact that Sandy Point was a problem, especially when it's at capacity and people are still trying to get back there and then trying to turn down a 50. So I met with Jeannie Hadaway, the Secretary of DNR, and her folks. And so we've come up with a plan now that they are going to notify us about a half an hour to 40 minutes prior to when they're at capacity. So they're basically going to predict about when they're going to be at capacity, and they're going to let us know. We're going to put it on our message boards. We're going to put it on, Twitter and other social media sites, so that we drive people away before they get back there and have to turn around and come back out on 50. So it is not going to fix the whole problem, but it's going to help another tool in our toolbox to try and help alleviate some of that congestion.
I mean, the toll removal was a big one. I mean, that helped immensely. with the queuing and the speeds going across the bridge and the contraflow, the transition, meaning that, you know, the July 4th weekend, I think we had Thursday was the thunderstorms, the travel day. And I know for a fact the contraflow was closed and opened 4 times.
Yeah.
Where in the past, once it closed, it stayed closed.
Yeah.
And, you know, the public notices that. So, I mean, you know, thank you for that. And, I mean, I'm looking forward to the gate system. I think it will help nicely.
really help.
So, you know, and I know that the eastbound side will be open by Memorial Day. So, you know, just like the paving, you know. Anyway, so with that being said, I'm going to let Jim leave here without too much scratches and cuts. But, you know, as far as State Highway is concerned, I talked to you last year about this. I know it was in video. You know, we are trying to install some flashing yellow lights at a couple crosswalks. Well, here we are a year later, and they're still not done. And we're paying for them. So we're not even asking for money. We're just asking for, can somebody please move this process along? And our director of parks is back there, Steve is back there, Chanley. And I think that now, we're just finally hearing about it, but a year is a long time.
Let me see, I was happy to see where that is.
Well, yeah, I think you need to know that, you know, just from that state. And, you know, there was one other thing. 301 southbound, I've asked twice about that. From about 304, I don't know the mile marker. You know, it was supposed to be repaved, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago, and they came through and they patched the middle of the road. It's in terrible condition. And I don't know how we can find out when that's ever going to be scheduled to be repaved there.
Yeah, we had a number of roadways that were scheduled to be repaved, and when our funding got hit, we had to kind of think we're going to do a little more maintenance here or there, but you know, we're hopeful to kind of get some of that money back. Our new budget does have a significant amount of dollars in resurfacing in it that we're going to kind of revamp.
Well, if we could just let us know, you know, if and when that's ever been planned. That's all I got, so.
No, Commissioner, just real quick,
Sure.
One thing that we've kind of talked about that we do think has been pretty successful is closing those crossovers.
Absolutely, and
15.
we're going to talk more about that in Anne Arundel County. So, I mean, be ready. That's all I can say, be ready. I agree 100%. And
Those ones we did down there have really worked well.
Yeah, and the messaging, and I think that, you know, we could do that same messaging on the Western Shore for that last ramp, and I think that's a safety hazard down there. So the sooner that safety issue gets resolved for Thursdays through Sundays, the sooner I think the emails will really start to curtail off. So be that as it may, that's all I got. So.
I've seen that look before.
So I don't know. I got one question that goes all the way back to Secretary Slater first started, but I just want to try to frame some numbers, and I'm not going to hold you to them, but just to kind of give the public here an idea of what we're looking at, a timeline. I don't think we really got to that. So best case scenario, NEPA 2 study moves forward. We're looking at a 5 to 6 year time frame probably. And again, just if that's ballpark, so we're at 2027. I'm just going to try to step forward. 2027. How long does it take to build a bridge 5 miles? Just ballpark again.
That's what, 4 or 5 year construction?
And then the engineering time would be?
Our nice Middleton.
Yeah.
Well, you'd want to do this design and build, you want to overlap some of the construction and design a little bit, build, keep building.
So, for the record, my name is Will Pines. I'm Chief Operating Officer for the MDTA. I would anticipate 4 to 5 years is very reasonable for this project of this size, the width of the bridge, trying to maintain the navigation channel. There's going to be a lot of complex construction for this size. Our nice Middleton Bridge, as an example, is a roughly 3 year project for a 2 mile bridge.
Okay, so best case scenario, if we were going to be conservative, we're looking at 2035. If everything goes well, before the first car would probably drive across there, right? I mean, ballpark. Just throwing it out there. So I guess so this wraps into my question about the whole thing is, you say the bridges are structurally sound now, they're in good shape and that kind of thing. How much are we spending or projected to spend between, say, now and 2035 in repairs to those bridges to keep them structurally sound?
So we have it to what, 65?
Yeah, the MDTA in 2015 performed a life cycle cost analysis that the study period was out to 2065.
Okay.
And the projection was $3.25 billion with a B dollars to maintain those 2 structures.
Okay, so those are based on present traffic volumes and projected whatever the % growth is per year in traffic volumes. but not looking at any of the cease and desist on the building that's going on at the beaches, which is bringing a lot of that traffic here with the high rises and all. So I'm just trying to frame it, again, in the public's mind. In my personal opinion, and I'm not, none of the other, I look at this as you know, in the whole Nice Bridge, I see this as a replacement bridge, because those bridges are going to get beat up a lot more than they were ever made to be beat up over the next 10, 12, 15 years, whatever it is. So I think that life cycle may be kind of generous based on the tractor-trailer traffic that I see since the Middletown bypass opened up. There's tons more tractor-trailers moving up and down the road. So that's got to be extra wear and tear on those bridges that, again, probably not designed for. So I look at this as a replacement for the shore to help the whole corridor, because I think that's where we're stagnated right now. From the 97, and I drive it every day, and from 97, where it meets back into 50, to 404, where you're going to either Delaware or Ocean City, that corridor it's our problem child. One accident, and it's a mess. So, and I think we all agree to that. So I'm just trying to frame it. So we're looking probably 2035 time frame. Now I'll go to my real question. I just want to put that there. So when you were talking early on about and this is one thing that troubles me, and I'm an electrician by trade, so I know that, we talk about all these electric vehicles we want to put on the roads. It's my knowledge, the electric grid that exists today as we sit here cannot support every household in even the state of Maryland with electric vehicle charging. Most houses would have to be retrofitted to have the amperage in their house to even charge an electric vehicle. Sure. Besides that, what happens to all these fuel taxes we're now using to fund our transportation infrastructure? Are we going to get an excise tax on mileage? Are we going to have little computer chips that calculate our I mean, we got to look 15 years down the road. If we're looking at all these modernizations and things we want to do, what is going to be all the other things that are going to be brought along with it to actually make it work? Because in my mind, I can't see how that transition is going to happen. You got 16 billion now. We put 10 million electric cars on the road. You don't have 16 billion anymore because you don't have any gas tax. So
That's right. There's this is a national issue that we're trying to kind of tackle as an industry. When you look in this state, you can barely it's not just electric vehicles. The cars you buy today are much more fuel efficient than the ones you bought 10 years ago. And so you can very clearly see a reduction in revenue from the vehicle, the motor fuel tax, and the vehicle miles traveled. So people are driving more, and we have less revenue coming into the system. There's been a number of scenarios that different areas have kind of looked at, and some pilots, those types of things. One is a vehicle miles traveled type of a tax. The Eastern Transportation Coalition is a group that has done some kind of research on that one. Essentially, you could submit your mileage to them, and they would tell you how much you would have paid in motor fuel tax based on your revenue, how much you would have paid in a mileage tax. Virginia has done some things. What Virginia did was actually said, and let me be very clear, I'm not saying I support, endorse, or any other kind of scenario there. I'm just saying, what some of the other areas have done. Virginia looked at the issue and said, okay, if you drive an electric vehicle, then you pay a tax of 85% or 75% of what the average motor fuel tax would be. You pay that in, or you can opt out of that tax and you can pay per mileage. You just have to submit your mileage, those types of things. So states are trying to tackle that. We have not tried to tackle that yet. One of the challenges that we have, we had a revenue increase, we had an increase in the motor fuel tax. Federal motor fuel tax has not been increased in decades. And we believe that Marylanders have stepped up, and it's time maybe for the feds to kind of look at that a little bit. But I think we're just trying to kind of watch that and see where it goes and see what model there. I have a lot of concerns with going too radical from one state or the other. I do think it needs to have a strong kind of role in federal government and the model there. There's been some groups that have looked at like fuel tax or sales tax, and then looked at tax on goods and shipping and those types of things, and that has resulted in basically higher cost of goods and higher cost of shipping, and you're kind of paying it in a different way. But how do you kind of get that back through? But yeah, it's a national issue and a very complex issue that everybody's trying to tackle.
That's all I got.
Anybody else?
Thanks for the easy one.
We did ask for a couple. Did we send this letter in? We're looking for additional cameras, if that's possible.
On 18?
Yeah, on 18 at a couple locations, Castle Marina Road and Nesbitt and Winchester Creek, just so we can get a feel for, okay, so everybody's aware of it. Just one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to. On the bridge.
Yeah.
I'd like to make point or two. As an equal member of Bragg, I'd like to actually commend Director Ports, Engineer Pines. I think you guys have done a fantastic job in the last years, I mean that, streamlining this thing and communicating it. I really want to commend you, and I'd like to extend that to Ash, who's working with us, getting this pretty involved runway transition redone. So I want you to feel warm and fuzzy.
Oh, great, thank you.
I want you to feel like Queen Anne's County is one place, it's a lot of places. So anyway, I think you guys have done terrific. I do make one further remark. Queen Anne's County is somewhat unique in the state in this regard, that I think it has imported into it a traffic problem that no other county does. Lots of counties have severe traffic problems, but they're indigenous and arising from the county itself. This one bears a burden which the state lays on it. And if you could help us out with something approachable, like a 213th 50 overpass or something, in some equity for the burden we bear, it wouldn't hurt our feelings. That's it.
Or the 301 corridor, in some of the act grades. I mean, we just had a bad head-on the other night that took our entire DES out, so it's, that's one we're really fighting with.
I want to thank you all.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so a very wise man once said to me that smaller government, deeper potholes and deeper grass. So I understand the financial challenges that that your departments are facing at a state level, as we are facing them here on the shore as well, and other counties across the state of Maryland. But I would be remiss if I didn't say along the lines of, showing some favoritism our way, to look at some of the maintenance practices of your state roads that come through Queen Anne's County, and see if we can't just improve those just a little bit. I know this morning that the crews were out cleaning up the Kent Narrows Bridge, which really looked bad, and that's just because of the volume of traffic that takes place. And once again, not necessarily our traffic. But so I want to thank you for that. Appreciate it. I actually saw the work being done myself. That was going to be one of the things that I wanted to mention. But, just the cosmetics, the aesthetic pleasure that you guys can give our local citizens here in Queen Anne's County by just showing a good effort in keeping your portion looking its best. That would be much appreciated.
Absolutely. I will say that, that was one of the areas that took a pretty significant kind of budget cut. We had to focus our efforts on more of the safety issues, pushing back vegetation at the intersections, those types of things. But now we're getting into that last mowing cycle where we're going to start pushing some of that vegetation back. But we hear you. I know.
And those things are noticed by the citizens and the folks that use our roads. They see that stuff, and that's something tangible that you guys can put in the bank and when you're tackling some of these larger issues that we're facing here in the county. Sometimes a lot of those little things will make up for that.
My public service announcement for the day is we spend $10 million a year cleaning up litter. If people would just throw it in their trash can, I can upgrade an intersection.
Well, I don't know why my delegation that sits behind you doesn't come up with a law that says if you have a pickup truck or any open vehicle truck, meshing, a lid, anything, because, a lot of that trash blows out of a lot of trucks, and I got trucks, and...
We can't get people to quit throwing their grass on the road.
Right.
Well, at least now somebody's going to pay for it, so...
Anybody else?
While we're on the Kent Narrows, I guess SHA is who we've been trying to work with to get that fishing closed off, correct? Isn't that right away to be able to close that off?
Yes.
So under the Kent Narrows, the old bridge.
The old bridge.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous situation.
Trying to think
there.
if somebody's fishing off it.
No, they do. Well, they get up. What they do is they get up underneath on that slanted part.
Okay.
And it's sandy, from the concrete dust and all. It's real slippery. I used to clean under there with one of the Canal Beach cleanups, and it was very dangerous going across. So we've had some people and I think we did have a couple actually go in, and that current there is horrible. All we were looking for is to be able to fence that area back across But it's, you guys right away, we've never been able to really come together to be able to do that, to eliminate people even being able to get up underneath that bridge at that point, because.
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that, see what we can do.
Thank you.
You know, as long as, you know, from our standpoint, as long as our bridge inspectors and our maintenance guys can get up in there, then we're good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that'd be a problem.
Yeah, we have posted that, we'll make sure to post these off, no trespassing.
He's hiding in the back.
Okay. All right.
Very good.
Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate the time and the commitment to our 36th district delegation. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here.
Take a break.
Yeah.
We don't have to adjourn. No, we just go and recess.
We're just recess? Yeah.
Hit it?
Call the meeting back to order.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Welcome to the Queen Anne's County Commissioners meeting. This is a public meeting that is being aired live on our local cable television station, QACTV 7. These media broadcasts provide county citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public sessions. In addition to our live audience this evening, we are providing remote options for citizens to watch and participate in county commissioner meetings. Citizens may watch our meeting live on our Queen Anne's County website at www.qac.org/live or on Queen Anne County's television channel, Atlantic Broadband Channel 7, and now High Definition Channel 507. Citizens may also participate by joining the live Zoom meeting by going to www.qac.org/public comment, and citizens may also email comments to publiccomment@qac.org. Comments received will be read during the press and public comment period on this evening's agenda. We acknowledge your participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. Press and public comment will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. If you care to speak, please sign the sheet on the information table outside in the lobby. Comments longer than 3 minutes can be submitted in writing for the Commissioner's review. We will now stand and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commission President Chris Corcorino.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for all the soldiers and sailors who serve this country abroad. Thank you.
All right, Commissioners. Next, we have the approval of our agenda for today's meeting, September 28th, and the regular and closed session minutes from your September 14th meeting. They've all been circulated for review. Do we have any additions and/or corrections?
Motion to add desk item number 11 to the agenda, action item number 11.
A second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion to approve the agenda and the minutes and the agenda as amended.
A second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All in favor? 5-0.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. That brings us to our first press and public comment section of the agenda this evening. Anybody sign up? Okay.
Skip right through.
I'll skip right over reading that statement then. Anybody on Zoom? Gentlemen, thank you. Okay. All right, then, we can go right on into the meat of the agenda. We have several action items. If you want to turn to tab number 3, we can work through those. Our first item is, this is the updated donation agreement for the YMCA of the Chesapeake, and this agreement effectively merges and supersedes a prior MOU and a prior property donation agreement, which was from 2015, respecting the construction and operation of the YMCA in Queen Anne's County. And this provides updated operational terms, county contributions and recapture provisions, and cooperative terms for use of the facility by the county for senior activities. So it's been approved by their board and our county attorney. So could I get a motion on that, please?
I move to execute the amended donation agreement between the YMCA of the Chesapeake and Queen Anne County as presented.
Second.
We got a motion and a second from Commissioner Morand. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 2 on page 8 is a rural legacy agreement of sale and project agreement for a 57.79 acre property owned by Charles and Sherry Patterson, which is ready to be submitted to the Department of Natural Resources for review and approval. Total funding is provided by the Rural Legacy Grants Program through Program Open Space. This is from Donna Landis-Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve the Rural Legacy Agreement of Sale and Project Agreement for the Charles and Sherry Patterson, the 4th property.
Second. All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 5-0, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Next, we have a whole series of budget amendments. First one is CC 12. This is item 3 on page 34. This is for the Housing Authority facility. This is for the Riverside remediation project. This provides spending authority of an additional $240,000 that was in this year's budget over to that remediation project, which is ongoing and should be hopefully completed by early next spring.
Motion to approve CC 12.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
So, question. So I thought the original bid for the remediation was at like 250,000.
Right. It turns out there was a whole host of other work activities. We had to remove flooring, walls. Once we got into the project, it was much more than just mold remediation. So, honestly, we probably could have, one of the buildings may have been probably better off to demolish the whole thing. They were a real mess, some of those buildings.
Okay.
So, but we're ongoing with this project, and this should be sufficient to cover the cost of the overall job.
All right. Contractor's still the same?
We had, for mold remediation, yes, we've had to have some other contractors come in to do some remediation work, floors, windows, doors.
Okay.
Yep. So, yep.
That's all I have.
I mean, it was a necessary project, had to be done.
Right.
It was going to get worse. All right, any more discussion? We got a motion to approve budget amendment CC 12. That's been seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 5-0, motion passes.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 4 on page 35 is budget amendment CC 13. This is for the Economic Development Group, and this is for a grant received from the Department of Commerce for online sales and telework.
Motion to approve CC 13.
Second.
Got a motion to second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Item 5 on page 36 is budget amendment CC 14, and this is a CDBG CARES grant. And this amendment recognizes CARES grant funding that was obtained for emergency rental assistance. It's now being redirected for the home delivered meals program.
This is 14.
This is number CC 14, yes.
I move to approve budget amendment CC 14.
Second.
Got a motion to second. Any discussion?
When does so when did the rent assistance program end? Or when does it end?
It's still ongoing. There was sufficient allocations for rental assistance, so they needed some additional funding over into the home delivered meals component of their program. So
it's still ongoing?
Yes, it is still ongoing, yes. Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, 5-0, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. All right, the next 4 budget amendments are all for the Parks Department, and you may remember that these were discussed during the budget, and they all sort of consolidate a lot of smaller capital projects into the major areas of capital programming that the Parks Department has, and I want to commend Director Steve Chanley, who's here, for working with us to sort of consolidate these. So the first one is on page, it's item 6 on page 37. Budget amendment CC 15. This is for parks major maintenance, and there's no new county dollars in any of these. It's just to sort of reduce the number of capital projects and put all of them in larger capital project categories.
Can we consolidate the whole of them into one vote?
I think we should do each one separately.
Okay.
But yeah.
Do them separately?
First one's parks major
Can we have
maintenance.
Steve come up and go over every single one of these line items?
We certainly can, if you would like him to do that. He's here tonight, ready for that, but we did talk about most of these, all of these, in fact, during our deliberations for our budget this year, so.
No pickup trucks? All right, move to approve budget amendment CC 15, I guess it is.
Second.
Got a motion and a second by Commissioner Wilson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 7 on page 39, and this is a consolidation of several projects for budget amendment CC 16 for athletic fields work.
Motion to approve
CC 16.
Second.
Got a motion and a second from Commissioner Duno. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 8, Budget Amendment CC 18. This is for preventative parks maintenance.
17.
We got 17 first.
Oh, excuse me.
Parks and
I
Concourse.
skipped that one. Excuse me. Yes, item number 8 on page 40 is Budget Amendment CC 17, Parks Landscaping.
Motion to approve CC 17.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Recuse.
Okay. 4 in favor, and Commissioner Steve Wilson recused.
All right,
Motion
thank you,
passes.
Commissioners. Item number 9 on page 41 is Budget Amendment CC 18. This is for preventative parks maintenance.
Motion to approve CC 18.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, 5-0, motion passes.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And item number 10, on page 42 is Budget Amendment CC 19. This is for the Chesapeake Heritage and Visitor Center bulkhead replacement, and this is a budget amendment that provides for additional grant funding and a county 50% local match. Total budget amendment for $388,246. And this was approved.
Motion to approve CC 19.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain again.
4 in favor, 1 abstain. Okay. Motion carries.
All right.
Did you just vote no? Abstain.
I just don't know how to feel about it, right?
All right, Commissioners, and
Just say no.
that's all the action items we had on our agenda. We have desk item number 11. This is from the Kent Ayers Foundation, G.G. Winley, and this is for a draw on their Fund 570 for $63,000 to cover administrative costs and work with the, on the county comprehensive plan and the community plan. So there is adequate funding for that in their account.
Move to approve the Kent and Ayers Development Foundation request to draw $63,000 from KNDF 570 fund and budget amendment CC 20. Sorry.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain?
To get their, the question was, why do we have to vote on their accounts? This is a budget amendment to allow them to use the funds in their account.
Yeah, but why do we have an authority over their account?
It's in their account, and we have the authority to allocate those funds towards.
Special tax
To special
tax
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
From the, no, this is for the,
Yeah.
this is to allocate the 63 over, we have to do it every year because of the 570 fund. I think that's why we have to
Yeah.
do it, because it's a 570 fund. Yeah.
I'm like that.
Do we got to vote on that?
Yeah. We got to vote. What's yours, Stevie? I didn't hear.
Happy, I'm happy.
Okay, five in favor. Let's go.
We're way ahead of schedule.
Time is,
6 o'clock's the hearing. And we don't have Ken here, so you can't do 6
Yeah, so next we have a public hearing scheduled, and we have to do that at 6 o'clock.
Okay, and then we have to wait for Ken Kozel. Let's do roundtable.
We can do roundtable if you like, yes. All right.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yep, all I got is, I don't know how many people, well, I'm sure we've heard it in the news. So they have the Kirwan Commission's Accountability Board has been set up at the state level. And the rural counties were completely shut out of it. They have 4 representatives from Montgomery County on it, 3 from Baltimore City, 1 from Anne Arundel, and 1 from Baltimore County. Not a single rural county is a part of this, and this is the Accountability Board that will oversee all of our education in the state of Maryland till the end of time. So I know Caroline County has written a letter. I think we should get on board and write a letter of disgust that not a single rural county was put onto this board. And they picked basically the worst school systems in the state to represent, and I just think it's a horrible travesty. So I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter in support, and we can use the Caroline County letter as a basis.
We don't need a nap.
I'll second that motion.
All right, got a motion and a second. You guys, some discussion? Has everybody had a chance to see the letter from Caroline County?
No.
No. Basically what Jack said.
No, but I agree with what he says.
You agree with it, right? Yeah. I mean, it's basically, it's only fair that the Eastern Shore should have some representation.
Any of the rural county. Give us one, you know.
Well, I'm going to speak for the Eastern Shore, right? I mean, that,
Yeah, but
we're
we
talking
should
about
definitely have
education statewide, and you have just 4 jurisdictions contributing.
Out of 24.
Out of 24 into it. You know, not even a region. I mean, it's not adequate representation, so.
Not with what the weight they're going to carry. No,
Right.
it's not, yeah, it's horrible.
Right. And the rural jurisdictions have different educational needs than some of the more
Oh my
populated
gosh.
areas of the types of programs that we have.
Right.
Right.
And it's
So
going
we
to deal
get
with
to fund
funding
their
and things like
programs.
that, so that's all other things that are different depending on what region you're in.
They're missing a complete lack of perspective of what's important, you know.
And I think there's quite a bit of uproar about it from,
As there should be.
and hopefully there'll be some changes made, so.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor of writing a letter in support along with what Caroline County has already sent, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's 5-0 in favor. Commissioner Dino?
So, myself and several of my colleagues had an opportunity to our senior centers, and there was a lot of great things that took place. So I will just share one thing, that it was nice to see the numbers of our seniors starting to utilize our senior centers again. And speaking to some of the senior center managers, those numbers are getting close to 75% of the original numbers of people that used to use our senior centers. So it's good to see those folks out, and I'm sure locked up during COVID, they missed, the programs and seeing each other, and so it was very comforting and nice to see that our seniors are back playing bingo and exercising and participating in our programs and things like that. So well done to Kathy Willis and our senior centers and their entire staff.
And a great lunch, too.
And the big hot dogs.
Big hot dog.
Commissioner Moran?
2 things. I guess the first thing I would say, in all seriousness, if you haven't had your vaccine shot, get your shot. There's no reason why you shouldn't get a shot. It's not going to change your DNA. You're not going to grow a tail. Just, please err on the side of caution and get your vaccine. So with that being said, we had a meeting with Secretary Slater, MDTA, everybody and anybody that has to do with State Highway today, and the commissioners have come up with a resolution about the Bay Bridge and about the replacement of the existing aged structures. And if you've got a pillow, pull it out, because I'm going to read this resolution into the record. And Margie was so kind to make it in the smallest font possible, so we'll see what happens here.
And there's no pictures on that either.
And there is no pictures, okay. So this is a resolution of the County Commissioners of Queenies County, Maryland, resolution number 21-17. Resolution in support of a replacement bridge at the current crossing of the William Preston Lane Jr. Memorial Bridge, otherwise known as the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. Whereas the iconic Chesapeake Bay Bridge, the Bay Bridge, connects Maryland's eastern shore with its western shore between Stevensville and Queen Anne's County and Annapolis and in Anne Arundel County. And whereas the original 2-lane span opened in 1952 as the world's longest continuous overwater steel structure, and a parallel span was added in 1973, and these 2 spans are the Bay Bridge in place today. And whereas the Bay Bridge is situated along a vital, heavily traveled link of the US 50 301 corridor that extends from I-97 to Maryland 404, and it connects businesses, healthcare, entertainment, and families of both Maryland shores, and provides the sole direct connection between recreational and ocean regions of Maryland's eastern shore with the metropolitan areas of Baltimore, Annapolis, and Washington, D.C. And whereas the Bay Bridge is owned, operated, and maintained by the Maryland Transportation Authority, the MDTA, it is in its modern-day construct as a dual 4.3-mile span with a 3-lane westbound span and a 2-lane eastbound span. And whereas the 3-lane span can be adjusted to compensate for traffic demands associated with periods of congestion using contraflow to reverse traffic flow during peak travel periods and is one of the longest sections of contraflow used in the country. And whereas the 5 lanes of the Bay Bridge that currently cross the Chesapeake Bay have not been adequate to effectively manage peak periods of traffic for many years. And whereas the approaching roadway segments along US 5301 consist of 6 lanes, which are geometrically incompatible with the 5 lanes crossing the bay, and whereas contraflow is used daily in an attempt to correct this incompatibility, but congestion and backups have now become routine in both directions. And whereas over the last 30 years, Maryland and Delaware have invested over $1 billion completing numerous roadway improvement projects in the region, including Reach the Beach, additional lanes along Maryland Route 2, the addition of I-97, upgrades to Maryland Route 404, and the Middletown, Delaware bypass. And whereas all of these corridors contribute to traffic crossing the same 5 lanes of the Bay Bridge in place since 1973. And whereas the existing bridges were designed for a 50-year life, and with the eastbound span now nearly 70 years old, and the westbound span now nearly 50 years old, maintenance needs and functional traffic management have become more challenging and expensive as the bridges age beyond the original design intent, and future maintenance projects will have a significant detrimental impact on available bridge capacity and operations. And whereas in 2015, the US 5301 William Preston Lane Jr. Memorial Bay Bridge Life Cycle Cost Analysis identified maintenance and rehabilitation costs for the existing bridges to be $3.25 billion through 2065. And whereas all travelers and commerce must go through this corridor to cross the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and whereas the lack of any alternative routes in this corridor result in backups on both the main line corridor and along all parallel community roads, which dramatically impact the health, safety, livability, and economy of communities located near the passages and along the US 5301 corridor on both sides of the Chesapeake Bay. And whereas the travel impacts are significant and disruptive to community quality of life and ability to access routine essential services, including emergency services, patient transport, fire response, schools, and both local and regional economy. And whereas the MDTA accurately predicted average summer daily traffic volumes forecast for over 100,000 vehicles per day by 2020 that are now being realized, along with future continuing trends of over 110,000 vehicles per day, resulting in projected 7-mile backups and 7 hours of delay time by 2030. If the capacity shortfall at the Bay Bridge is not addressed promptly. And whereas the only viable solution to eliminate the bottleneck caused by the Bay Bridge capacity constriction is to expeditiously align previous transportation investments in other route improvements with a new replacement bridge and functional mainline approach roadways that are compatible and have adequate capacity to safely move traffic on the US 5301 corridor. And whereas in recent years, Governor Lawrence J. Hogan has worked diligently to identify a solution that will maximize congestion relief and minimize the environmental impact. And whereas Governor Hogan has dedicated countless resources and efforts to provide traffic relief in Maryland for families, commuters, and businesses, and has directed improvements at the Bay Bridge to reduce current congestion and minimize delays related to required maintenance, including expediting redecking on the westbound span, installing an electronic toll collection system, removing physical toll booths, and providing free Easy Pass transponders to citizens while keeping tolls at historically low levels. And whereas on August 30th, 2016, Governor Hogan announced $5 million in funding for the MDTA to conduct Tier 1 crossing. The governor announced he was giving $5 million. So I thought it's on. Whereas the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study, Tier 1 NEPA, Bay Crossing Study, is a National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, study being conducted with public and agency involvement to result in the identification of a preferred corridor alternative to provide adequate capacity, dependable and reliable travel times, and flexibility to maintenance and the incident management in a safe manner at the Bay Bridge with the evaluation of its financial feasibility, traffic alleviation, and environmental analysis. Oof. And whereas in February of 2021, the MDTA, in cooperation with the Federal Highway Administration, issued a Tier 1 draft environmental impact statement for the Bay Crossing study. And whereas the FHWA and the MDTA have announced their intention to issue a combined Tier 1 final environmental impact statement and record of decision sometime in the winter of 2021-2022. And whereas following the completion of the Tier 1 study, a more extensive and detailed Tier 2 study must be done to thoroughly assess the preferred corridor alternative identified in the Tier 1 study, as well as the potential environmental impacts, and possibly advance a new replacement bridge and approach highway or roads. And whereas communities in both Anne Arundel and Queen Anne's counties will continue to experience the impacts of increased traffic volume and delays during the multi-year Tier 2 process, and as the current Bay Bridge remains in a constant state of maintenance and rehabilitation, and whereas it is imperative that the Tier 2 environmental impact statement be funded and begin immediately, and all efforts be made to expedite the lengthy and extensive federal process, now therefore be it resolved by the County Commissioners of Queen Anne's County, Maryland, that it hereby finds that the best solution to maintain forward progress, support the investments already made along the US 5301 corridor, specifically from I-97 to Maryland 404, and address the existing and future traffic capacity shortfalls, is to replace the current 2 spans of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge with a single new replacement bridge constructed at the same location that includes a minimum of 8 travel lanes to provide adequate capacity and dependable and reliable travel times. And be it further resolved that the County Commissioners hereby request that the Tier 1 Chesapeake Bay crossing study be concluded, and that sufficient resources be allocated for the Tier 2 Chesapeake Bay crossing study. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to County Council of Anne Arundel County for their consideration and mutual support. Signed, the Queen Anne's County Commissioners.
You done?
I'm done.
Job well done.
Hubba, hubba.
We're done.
We're done. There you go. Look, I almost got us back on track. Okay.
You want to mention what Anne Arundel's doing too?
Excuse me?
What Anne Arundel's doing as well.
Yeah, and also, thank you, Todd. So this resolution signed by the county commissioners is also the same resolution, almost to the letter, is what Anne Arundel County is going to introduce and vote on at their next, or there's already been introduced, but they'll vote on it at their next meeting, and hopefully the two of us can start fighting some of the traffic issues that we're both plagued with, as 2 heads are better than 1. So
Make the motion, Jim. You gotta make the motion.
To accept it?
To accept it. We gotta adopt it.
okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 21-17.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I think all,
I think you said everything.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Can't add any discussion. Stevie?
No, I'm.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
He's happy.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, motion passes.
Is that it?
Your turn to speak.
Okay.
He reached his limit for next month. You know how
Well, I think it is of more than ordinary significance that Anne Arundel, which has been, I won't say blockading the situation about the bridge, but not enthusiastic, seems to have changed its orientation. And now, if they sign this, support it. And that would be of immense importance to the outcome, because they're 10 times our size and about 11 times our political weight. So,
But feel the same pains we do.
not quite.
Well, at least they think they do, so.
I understand. Everyone does. So that's issue 1. Issue 2, I'm going to ask this group for make a motion that the county commissioners of Queen Anne's County resolve to provide adequate money to restore the roof and windows of the old high school education building, adequate to preserve it into the future. Its future to be determined by a committee, which has been already determined, but I'd like to see that the building was there to be used. So I would like to ask for a second on a motion to provide adequate money to keep the building intact.
I'll second that.
So
Do I have a second?
we should probably talk dollars. We should probably talk dollars and things like that. But why don't we do this? Why don't we create a motion, a detailed motion that includes dollars and timeframes and things like that, and then vote on that? Because I mean, you don't have much to go on right now. So let's create one that we can read and vote on in 2 weeks.
I'll accept that.
So we'll table the motion.
Yeah, because I'm in favor of getting the pricing and finding out what it is and moving forward.
We have gotten one out of our DPW, which is $800 and some thousand.
Right, which I've seen.
Yeah.
But I think the motion should have some hard numbers in it.
I accept that.
Okay.
All right,
So we'll write one and table. So we'll table your motion.
Thank you.
Very good.
Anything else?
No.
All right, I'll be brief so we can get to our presentations and our hearing. I attended there was a unveiling breakfast for the new Queenies County branding platform, and Economic Director Heather Tonelli did a really great presentation about, facts about Queenies County, why Queenies County is a great place to do business, but also a lot of details about Queenies County and, over the years, how it's developed and where we've come along to. So people who want to get a better feel for Queenies County and the real statistics for Queenies County should watch that video. It's on QACTV. A lot of really good information about Queenies County versus some of the myths that you would see on Facebook. So I would encourage you to, get facts and know a little bit more about, what Queenies County has to offer, especially if you're new living here. A lot of people who just move here, they move to Kent Island and they think Queenies County sort of ends at the outlets or at the Kent Narrows Bridge. Their Queenies County is so much more than that.
And they go to the Queenies County Commissioner's website and go to QAC Channel 7.
Right. Or you can go to QACTV on YouTube or QACTV on Facebook, and the video is up there. So. And with that, we can go to the hearing.
Yes, it's just 2 minutes after 6 o'clock, and we have a public hearing scheduled for County Ordinance 21-08, and here comes Patrick Thompson, our county attorney, and this is to adopt potentially the 2017 National Electric Code, and this was introduced 2 weeks ago as emergency legislation. So we can vote on it this evening, and then it would be effective immediately if passed.
It requires 4 votes to pass as
Because
emergency
emergency.
legislation to be effective immediately. At the regular meeting on September 14, 2021, Commissioner Steve Wilson introduced County Ordinance number 2108, an emergency bill entitled An Act Concerning the Adoption of the 2017 National Electric Code for the purpose of adopting the 2017 edition of the National Electric Code, NFPA 70, as part of the building code for Queenies County, by amending Section 10-1 of Chapter 10 of the Public Local Laws. This hearing is being held Tuesday, September 28, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the County Commissioner's Meeting Room, Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, Centerville, Maryland. Copies of the proposed ordinance have been available at the County Commissioner's office during normal business hours and online on the county website. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Written testimony of any length can be submitted on or before the hearing date to the county commissioners. All hearing sites are accessible to individuals with disabilities. Sign language interpreters and assistive listening systems are available. Part of the record of the proceeding will be a certificate of publication indicating notice of the night's hearing was published in the Bay Times Record Observer prior to the hearing. I don't think anyone has signed up. Do anybody here has any public comment with respect to County 2108?
I do.
Come on.
I'm considered, can I just stand here?
They got to get you a mic first.
Or sit.
Just sit right here, there's a microphone.
Sit right, just testify right there.
Give your name and address to the record if you
I'm Rob Beasley, R.J. Beasley Electric. I'm a member of the Queen Anne's County Electrical Board. I'm here in favor of the 2017 code being initiated because we're having problems with getting equipment. They physically, I don't know how in depth does everybody know?
Well, go into some detail a little bit just for our TV audience.
Okay, so what we're running into is getting breakers that are required in the 2020 code to be able to connect to appliances and so forth. Certain breakers that are required for piers. It's just the 2020 code is almost in front of the manufacturers, and generally they work hand in hand, and that's not the case right now. It's causing a lot of problems with people trying to finalize homes. Inspectors not sure of how to handle certain things. When they go to inspect, we don't have the breaker. How do we handle it? How do we move forward? So that's kind of where we're at. It's not that we don't want to move to the 2020 code. We need to move there when everything is ready, and the manufacturers aren't ready, so we can't put the product in. Our number one concern is always the community and the safety of everybody, but to be able to do that, we have to be able to get the product. So it's really hindering our forward progress. So.
Good, perfect.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
All right, we'll close public comment.
So I'll make a motion to adopt County Ordinance 2108 as emergency legislation.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
I just, again, to reiterate what Mr. Beasley said, you're establishing a code, and yet the manufacturers to provide the materials to our electricians to be able to do their jobs, they can't get what they need. So to move back to the 2017 code doesn't do anything other than allow them to use available products that are today. It doesn't change the safety measures that they take. It doesn't change anything the way that they conduct and install these things. It's just, it comes down to a simple product availability.
Right. I think we've seen this with, supply chain's been affected with everything, right, because of COVID. And this does not affect public safety in a negative way by voting in favor of this. In fact, in many ways, it's for the public because we're able to get the electric work done that needs to be done, that the public needs to be done.
And we're in compliance with the state. Senate Bill 762, the state is on the 2017 electric code. So the state has not moved forward, so there's really no reason for the county to have moved forward either. So all we're doing is getting in line with the state.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 5-0, motion passes, goes into effect tomorrow.
Back tomorrow.
Thanks,
Thank
Patrick.
you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Alan, I can go inspect all those houses tomorrow and get them final.
Go give them their finals.
Make some people happy tomorrow. Take care. See ya.
All right, Commissioners, next we have, under presentations, we have Ken Kozel, University of Maryland, Shore Regional Health, CEO, and for an update, so come on up. And if you look at tab number 6, I believe there is an agenda in there of some speaking points that these gentlemen will be covering this evening. Yeah, item Roman numeral 2 on page 23, tab number 6. So, gentlemen?
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen. Good evening. How are you tonight?
Marvelous.
Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to spend a little time with you this evening and give you an update on Shore Regional Health. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce Dr. Walter Atha. Dr. Atha is our Regional Director for Emergency Services. So Dr. Atha has oversight responsibility of all 4 of our emergency departments within Shore Regional Health. So I asked him to come here today because what we'd like to speak with you a little bit about this evening is we'll start with a high-level overview of COVID-19 and share with you where we are with our COVID pandemic fight. We'll also then shift to our emergency center and some of the volume trends that we've seen in our emergency center and why we're experiencing those higher volumes. Then we'll get into some conversation about the alert statuses that we've been experiencing both here in Queen Anne's as well as in Easton. And that's been a challenge I know that you're aware of for some time. So we'll talk a little bit about that and make sure we answer your questions there. And then finally, we'll give you a brief update on our urgent care vision for Kent Island and for Queen Anne's County. So hopefully that covers some of the items you want us to talk about, but if you've got any questions along the way or anything else you want to speak to, we'll be happy to address those as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I think we have 1 minute and 22 seconds on the clock.
You're not on a timer.
The seat is warm though, so well, again, thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you tonight, and as you are fully aware, we are 18 months now into COVID-19. And I don't know about you, but I'm about tired of this pandemic. I really am. But one thing that I think it's important to share is that we are so grateful and proud of the partnership that we have established between Shore and Queen Anne's County and how we fought this fight together. And not just the COVID fight, but how the communities have come together during these trying times to focus on working collaboratively with each other to help resolve some of these challenges. And Mary Alice actually shared a brief story with me, a recent story about what happened during a mass casualty event that we experienced here in the county, where members of the Queen Anne's County community, EMS, fire, other support personnel for the county came to the aid of the Queen Anne's Emergency Center when we needed it most, when we had an influx of patients come into our facility. They not only showed up and were present, but they were actively engaged in the care and management of those patients as they came through the emergency center. And that's the type of collaboration and partnership that just really fills my heart with pride, that we are a small community taking care of each other, especially when we need each other most. And that's exactly what we've been doing with COVID over the last 18 months. It's not been easy. We are now in the fourth peak of this pandemic, believe it or not. And we are still seeing an enormous amount of inpatients coming through our system that are COVID positive. When I looked at the latest data today, I'll focus on the system, the University of Maryland Medical System in total. We have 150 inpatients that are positive for COVID in our facilities. And that number has been climbing over the last several weeks. So that's what we're starting to see, and it's in large part because of the Delta variant. We're seeing Delta with COVID positive patients resulting in admissions in our hospitals. And in large part, it's for patients who have not been vaccinated with either Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson. And Phil, you shake your head, and I do too, because we have the cure. We have the answer right in front of us, and it's just a matter of getting our community, our collective community of the country behind behind the vaccinations.
Ken, real quick, I just want to stop you there because for clarification. So when you're saying it's the Delta variant, do we have a separate test for the Delta variant versus the old Corona? Or how do we know it's Delta variant, I guess is my question.
It's on a population basis because essentially early on when we were trying to determine what the new pathogen was, CDC and local health authorities did actually separate out and do specific tests to confirm that it was COVID, that it was Delta variant. But as that became the dominant strain, they stopped testing specifically, and now it's just Corona and assumed to be Delta.
So we don't know how many Deltas, how many old Corona there may be?
It became the overwhelming predominant strain, and so they stopped speciating. To my understanding, I shouldn't speak in expertise public
It's
health.
like influenza A versus influenza B, more or less is where you're at.
Exactly. We follow the strain, and when B becomes dominant, then we say it's flu, and that's what's out in the community.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So as I mentioned, about 150 patients in the system. And what we're seeing is about 25% of those patients are sick enough to be admitted into our intensive care units. And those are the units where the most intensive care is needed and the sickest patients are located within our hospitals. And another 25% of those patients are on ventilators, which are mechanical breathing devices that promote breathing. So that's when you're really sick and you've got this disease as far as it will likely take you.
I'm sorry, Ken, out of the 150, those numbers are on here on the shore.
Total. That's all of the hospitals. I was going to take the plane down for a minute and get the shore specifically, but at that's what we're seeing.
Okay, all right.
How many of those are vaccinated?
I don't have those specific numbers for the 150, but the trends we're seeing are 75, 80, 90% are unvaccinated.
And then of those 150, how many did you say were on respirators?
About 25%. 25% in the ICU and 25% in the on ventilators.
Are you seeing any vaccinated in ICU?
We do see vaccinated patients in the ICU, we do. But I think, I should let the physician speak, but what I believe we're seeing is that those are sick patients. Those are patients that are immunocompromised, comorbidities. They are very, very sick. So it's possible that they would have been admitted even had they not had COVID.
I take your point.
So COVID's not the primary diagnosis necessarily. Now, taking the plane down for a second at shore, what we're seeing here on the midshore is single digits with admissions to our hospitals. So we're not in double digits, but we've seen that flux back. We were running 0 for several weeks at a time and felt like we were ready to do the victory lap. But that's when we started to increase our numbers, and now we're hovering between 5 and 10 patients a day, primarily out of our Easton Hospital. So we're seeing that number of patients on the Eastern Shore that are COVID positive. Same relative percentage of vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and roughly about 25% of those patients are in our ICUs, but only about 10% are on ventilators. So that's kind of the types of patients we're seeing at the shore. And again, I think our challenge has been, how do we eradicate this pandemic once and for all? So
vaccinated.
We have the solution. But to be honest with you, back in August, when we made a decision as part of the University of Maryland medical system to mandate vaccines for our workforce, it wasn't necessarily a popular decision then, because the federal government hadn't come out yet. The governor in the state of Maryland did talk about vaccinations and the importance, but the University of Maryland stepped out and said, not only do we expect that you get vaccinated, but we're going to put it as a condition of employment. And that's kind of where we're going towards as an organization over the next couple of days. On October 1st, a couple of days from now, you'll have to be vaccinated to be a team member within the University of Maryland medical system, of which Shore is a part of.
Which is going to be interesting, because you're already talking about a well underserved profession as far as your nursing staff. And
absolutely.
And so what's that going to do to staffing that's already running thin anyway?
It is a challenge, no doubt.
It's a tough decision to make.
And this challenge is not unique to Shore. It's not unique to the University of Maryland. This is a national crisis.
Do you mandate flu shots already?
Yes, sir, we do.
So they already get, the ones that are working now already get a flu shot?
Yes, sir, we do. That's correct. And we're coming up on that season as we speak. So October is flu season. So we're going to begin to mandate flu vaccinations for our team members as well. Now, there are a few exceptions that apply. If you have a religious exemption, or if you have a medical condition that's approved by a physician, you can have an exemption to being vaccinated. The other is a deferral. If you're pregnant, we can defer your vaccination during pregnancy, but when you deliver, there's an expectation and a time frame associated with being vaccinated. So minus those exceptions, our entire workforce within the University of Maryland medical system, about 30,000 strong, need to be vaccinated, and October 1 is our time frame.
What percentage are you now vaccinated, do you think?
Yeah, so as an system, we're slightly over 90%, so 91%.
Oh, well done.
At the Shore system, about the same. We're seeing about the same number of vaccinated. Our challenge is, how do we get from those that aren't vaccinated now to vaccinated by October 1, and making sure that, one, they're aware of the consequences, which I think everyone is at this point. We've been talking about this for some time now. That they're aware of the expectations of what we have, and that they're aware of the ramifications of their decision.
Does this run the full gamut of employees, nurses, doctors, maintenance?
Everyone,
everything?
yes, even contracted employees that come in to do work in our facilities, volunteers, and all levels of employees, yes.
You walk into that building, you'll be vaccinated.
That's correct. So that's where we are. The timeline is October 1st. We are offering vaccinations, numerous vaccinations between now and then. We have enough vaccine supply to vaccinate every one of our team members who has not been vaccinated, and they can still get the J&J vaccine between now and October 1st and meet the policy's requirements. So there is still that window, but the clock is ticking. And we really do it, gentlemen, because while working in healthcare is truly an honor, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to work in healthcare and provide healthcare for our patients. But with that privilege, I believe, comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to do all we can to care for our patients and their visitors and our team members in as safe a manner as possible. And we know that the vaccine is the safest solution for this pandemic. And that's why the mandate exists. It's a privilege, but we've got responsibilities, and now's the time to own up to those responsibilities. So that's where we are with COVID. We hope that we get to 100% vaccination rate before October 1st. That's our goal, and we're doing everything we can to make that happen.
Just for curiosity, is Shore Easton, let me frame it like the state of the art in treatment? Do you do monoclonal? Do you do everything? Or would you transfer it somewhere else if it was a very complex case?
I'll ask the doctor to.
And I'm speaking for my colleagues in the ICU because this is not my specialty, but we certainly do take care of every patient who doesn't require a service that we cannot provide. So to answer the first part of your question, monoclonal antibodies actually are not indicated for admitted patients. They're for patients for patients who are admitted to the hospital. There are other options. There are some options that have some degree of efficacy, and we do follow all the guidelines as they've developed. And I'll speak generally as a physician again, and not as an ID expert. But I will say that dealing with a pathogen that we've only known about for 18 months and declaring absolute terms is challenging in terms of the efficacy of the treatments, but we follow the standards. And we do proning protocol, in case you've heard of that, is that it increases the lungs' ability to oxygenate if a patient is on their face down. So we do all of these things.
Yeah, I was listening to a BBC report this morning that had an extensive review of the treatments that were affected, and steroids and monoclonals were the leading.
Yes.
So it's interesting you do not provide that. Is that correct?
And to the community, we provide the monoclonal antibodies
What's
as well. We coordinate with the community resources to provide monoclonal antibodies to patients who are discharged and are still out in the community as well.
So that's one of the benefits of being part of the University of Maryland medical system, is that there is a staffing pool that every member organization can tap into if needed. And our benefit is that staffing pool will help support our monoclonal antibody infusion therapies. So we do not currently offer it now. We've been struggling with staffing, but with that pool coming to the Eastern Shore, likely within the next week to 10 days, we'll reintroduce monoclonal antibody treatments to our community. So we had to back off because of staffing, because of the pool within UMS. We have it now, and I think within the next 10 days, we'll reinstitute that on the shore. Very important as a treatment therapy to prevent hospitalizations and to prevent those patients who are newly diagnosed from really getting sick and needing higher levels of care.
That's very reassuring. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So switching gears from COVID, we wanted to state the obvious, which is notwithstanding COVID, we have been incredibly busy within our emergency center here in Queen Anne's, as well as in all 4 emergency departments that Dr. Atha oversees. So I asked Dr. Atha to just give you a high-level overview of the volumes, the acuity levels, the types of patients that we're seeing in Queen Anne's, in Easton, as well as on the Mid-Shore. So, Doctor?
Sure. So if you guys were aware, early in the pandemic, the numbers dropped off dramatically. And we were very concerned because people who needed emergency services for chest pain, strokes, and so forth were avoiding hospitals completely because we knew so little about the pathogen. And people were very concerned about coming to the hospital. So our volumes dropped tremendously, and reflecting a nationwide trend of as much as 30-40% drop in emergency department visits. At this point, we have reconstituted that volume at 3 of the 4 sites, Dorchester, Easton, and Chestertown, to somewhere around 90 to 95% of pre-COVID volumes. Queen Anne's is at 120+% of pre-COVID volumes. So, for example, Queen Anne's pre-COVID routinely saw somewhere around 45 to 50 patients a day. Our most recent record was 83 patients in one day. And I can speak to that because I was there, so I'll pat myself on the back for that. But it was quite busy, and a facility that is historically used to handling volumes of 40 to 50. I have to congratulate the staff for being able to handle it beautifully. Of course, there have been times that we're using the waiting room for the first time at the existence of the facility, reflecting the volumes going up. But we have had a very low walkout rate. Our satisfaction scores have remained high, and patients are still getting the care that they come to expect at that facility. So I congratulate the staff on having weathered it and continue to provide exemplary care. And I would second Mr. Kozel's comments from Mary Alice and also from Dr. Wong about the partnerships with EMS. Is that the understanding back and forth in terms of the challenges faced on both sides of patient care delivery and the continuity of that the relationship between EMS and the facility, I think they remain strong. People are, of course, frayed thin. This is a very challenging era, both in EMS and hospital care and every other delivery of healthcare system, and of course every other field in the country, not just healthcare. But tensions run high, and we've dealt with situations that have flamed occasionally, but generally the relationship remains as amicable as it has been in the past.
Now, as you know, all of us follow the numerics and metrics of the system, and certainly as the summer wore on, it was very clear that the alert system, which is, before we get into whether the alert is a good system or not, that thing began to back up in a very alarming kind of way, because normally in summer we'd be dropping down to the very low digits or 0 or something, and here we were at 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours, then it turned 100. Then it turned 145 out of 166 hours in a week. And then one week it was 225 hours, which was, I'd never seen a number like that in all my days. And I wrote you a letter, and that letter said that it concerned Queen Anne's County that if the ER was the whole operation was that stressed at this time of the year, when we wound up down in the deep days of January, when the load really comes on with ear infections and backups in the ER room, how did, what was it? I wasn't interested in it so much in the descriptive which you sent us, talking about retention and recruitment and so on, as it was a predictive statement about how you thought things would shape up this winter, when it seemed to me nothing but more stress lay ahead of you. So that's what I'm interested in.
Well, thank you for that question. And I think what we've seen that's trending is that when we are most busy, it's usually that everyone around us is busy as well. And what we've found is that there's a correlation between when we're on alert status in Queen Anne's for yellow alert with other hospitals on the other side of the Western Shore also being on alert status, because they're incredibly busy as well. So oftentimes those patients are brought over to Queen Anne's. We see them in Queen Anne's. The acuity of those patients, the degree of their illness is usually sometimes higher than what we are accustomed to in the emergency center at Queen Anne's. So those patients are dropped off from the Western Shore. They're cared for in Queen Anne's. They're sicker, so they take a little bit more resources, and they're harder to place to that next level of facility, either back in Anne Arundel County in a nursing home or assisted living facility, or in a healthcare facility, which is all packed with inpatients and on other types of alerts. So it's an incredible challenge, and we see that correlation happen pretty regularly in our Queenstown facility. There's a direct correlation there of those patients that come east from the west. And I think it's going to take a strategy, Commissioner, to sit down and talk with our partners across the Western Shore and figure out a way that we can work together more closely to prevent these types of transfers back and forth, because it does have an effect on our emergency center, which isn't designed to be the same as a hospital ED. It's a freestanding emergency center, and there are some limitations to the types of patients we should be seeing in that facility. And I think we have to just work collaboratively with our partners on the other side of the shore to understand and appreciate that.
I certainly accept that and appreciate the fact we had heard reports that they were getting overloaded over there, and certainly the numbers we see constantly mirror your numbers also. Right. You'd be at 140, they'd be at 80 or 90 or 100 hours, but that notwithstanding, it doesn't really answer the question what you think. Are our citizens going to be sitting for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours in January and February when the ear infections and all the normal school traffic starts to come in? The reason I bring this up is not to badger you. It's for a somewhat different motive, which is that if we can drive any more people into getting vaccinated, knowing that the system in the winter is going to be even under more stress, it would seem to me that having the public be aware of that would be positive for the public. So that's not an intention to,
For the folks that may be on the fence about getting a vaccine or not, this could push them making the decision to go ahead and get it done.
Absolutely. Our wait times in the ER are growing. Our ability to treat you in a timely manner is growing, and in some part, it is because of unvaccinated community members.
This is no attempt to complain or whine about things. I'm just concerned, and all of us are, about the capacity of the system. If you're stressed out now, what the hell is going to be improving when you got more load and more burnt out people in late December?
Mr. Purcell, one of your members,
Pardon.
Okay, sorry. They had said something. They wanted to share something that's on the screen.
This is the graphic.
Oh, that's the,
Yeah, sorry.
thank you. But that graph depicts the volume increases over time, and what you see at the lowest dipping point there, about 3/4 in from the slide, left to right, is COVID. That's the COVID volumes at Queen Anne's Emergency Center when we were in the beginning stages of COVID.
Right.
And as you can see, as we've climbed out of COVID into different peaks, the latest point on the far right-hand side is where our volumes are today. And that's what Dr. Atha was saying, is that depicts kind of that high level of acuity and high level of patients that we're seeing today in Queen Anne's. So it did dip, and it's growing and growing and growing over time. And in large part, it's COVID vaccinations, but it's also what Dr. Atha said before. It's people that have pent-up need that didn't experience the emergency department when they probably should have several months ago.
And we see it. I mean, our transport volume is, we hit almost 90 last week, if I'm not mistaken, and our typical run would be more 60 or something. So it's really walking up here too.
And we recognize, though, that there are staffing limitations. So there are certainly challenges with staffing and making sure that we've got enough staffing, not just in Queen Anne's, but in Easton, so we can support the flow of those patients through the ER and to the inpatient units, so we can accept more patients in the ER. Dr. Atha and I and a bunch of others are working on solutions there. But we also feel like another solution, and it's not going to happen, unfortunately, before November or December, but another solution for Queen Anne's County is an urgent care center here. And it is getting urgent care. So those types of illnesses that don't require emergency department care can be seen safely, timely, and a great experience level. And unfortunately, we are still working on a lease agreement for the space that we've identified. We haven't got to terms with 2 national companies trying to get to terms on their agreement before they'll sign a lease agreement for us. But we are working that to the very nth degree. And when we get that lease signed, and we hope we're close, it'll take about 16 weeks, about 4 months, to retrofit the space that exists into an urgent care facility. And it's right on Kent Island, and we'll be able to see patients in this community for urgent care. But we can't start that 16-week time clock until we get this lease agreement signed. And unfortunately, there's some of that's out of our control. We have to have the 2 parties that are involved with us getting to yes before we can get the lease agreement signed. So that's kind of where we are, but that's our 10,000-foot view of COVID, the implications of volumes, the alert statuses, and one of our strategies to address some of the challenges here.
Just for the curiosity, because everybody in this room and everybody in the United States hears about the staffing issue, what is it that ran the staff off? I mean, a very interesting point is you constantly, first it sounded like they were getting hired somewhere else, but everywhere you went.
I think it's multifactorial. It's some of our team nurses, let's say nurses in general for a second. Some of our nurses have decided to retire. They are at that retirement age, and they just said, you know what, thank you, I'm done, I'm burned out, I'm going to retire. Others have said similar things, but they're not at retirement age, so they've gone out of the profession, maybe into a doctor's office status, maybe into a lesser acuity type of hospital environment, so they're still in the profession, but they're not in the ER or in the inpatient unit. So some have migrated into a different type of nursing position. Others have migrated out of the field completely and just have transformed their careers into something different outside of hospital, healthcare, and nursing in general. So we're seeing more and more of that, and that just accelerated. And then the fact that we're having fewer come back into the system to backfill those that left, that's where the challenge comes.
Do you see it across the whole spectrum with the PAs and the nurse practitioners, or is it confined to the nurse?
I don't, and maybe Walt has a better perspective on this. I think the PAs and the nurse practitioners are growing. They're growing in numbers and strength because I think they're going to fill a niche for us. They're going to fill a specific void that's necessary and essential to support the providers, the medical physicians, as well as complement the nursing staff's care plan. So
Thanks.
I think that's going to continue to grow over time. And hospitals have to pivot to address that and incorporate them more closely into the care model.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it from me.
Any other questions?
No. Oh, real quick, just out of curiosity.
I said no.
Done. One shot.
I started putting my papers together, Phil.
Just real quick, so elective surgeries, how's that still kind of on a standby thing?
Great question. At points in times during COVID, at points in times during COVID, we did have to back off on elective surgeries. And the reason why is because the great staff that works in the operating room has said, we'll transfer our skill set to the inpatient units because there was such a void there.
Is that where you are still?
No, well, they are fantastic. We are blessed because it worked out well, and we've learned from it, and we've modified and tweaked it so it's going to be even more effective. But today, we're at 100% capacity with our operating room, so we haven't made that transition. But that's a tool in the toolbox that we may have to use after October 1st or if these shortages and challenges continue. But today we're at 100%, but the nursing teams in our ORs that have made those transitions have been incredible. The inpatient unit nurses have accepted them and embraced them as part of the care team there, and it's helped us through some very dire straits.
Well, I think it's important that you leave those hero signs up in front of your facilities because they still are.
I agree, and I agree wholeheartedly. And our entire workforce is the heroes because it takes an entire care team to care for a patient. Our support services, our nurses, our techs, our medical technologists, imaging, our doctors too, I guess to some degree.
I can't speak for my fellow commissioners, but 2019 and 2020 saw me at the Easton Memorial Hospital, Regional Hospital, for a couple of things that I had to deal with. 3 days, 4 days, that was there on both occasions. And the nursing staff, I mean, you can't say enough great things about them. They were just amazing.
Thank you for that.
Just shy of spectacular. Often wonder where they hide their wings.
I couldn't agree more, and we are blessed, and we're a community taking care of each other, and that's what we're all about. So again, thank you for our partnership. Thank you for the support we get from every single person in Queen Anne's County and the support team. We can't do what we do without you. It's still going to be rough roads ahead for us, but we'll get through this together.
So, and the public can help. Get your COVID vaccine. Get your flu vaccine.
Yes.
Go to your primary care physician regularly so it doesn't develop into something that requires critical care or the ER. That's some stuff that the public can do to sort of help out on this. And that's so we have the space for those who really need it to get that emergency treatment that they need.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you
I also
so
want
much.
to thank you. I had one of my daughters at the ER in Queenstown this summer with a very life-saving diagnosis. You guys were fantastic, so thank you.
Thank you. We'll pass that on, and we appreciate your support. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the time.
That's it?
That's all we have for the commissioners tonight, so we can do press and public comments, if there's any press and public comments.
Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.